Season 3 of the Sporting Chance podcast is brought to you by MountainStateFalconrySupply.com. Check out Mountain State Falconry Supply for all of your micro and East Coast falconry needs.
This podcast is also brought to you by Midnight Falconry Supply. Visit him at midnightfalconry.com for your tightest braided equipment.
And also, NorthMountainGoshawks.com. Contact Seth Roy to reserve next season's hunting partner. Welcome, everyone, back to the Sporting Chance podcast. Today, we're joined by primarily Steve Layman, but in addition to Steve, we have former guests of the show, Geoff Hirschi and Mike Radford. Thanks for coming on, guys.
Yeah, they're both good friends.
So Steve was just telling us before we started that he flew eagles on San Juan Islands.
Yeah.
After the European rabbits that were introduced.
Yeah, the European rabbits have been on the island since the 40s and 50s, and the European rabbits, they live underground. They make warrens, and when you read the old British and European falconry about hunting their rabbits, they're not like our cottontail. They do burrow underground. They live in colonies. They use ferrets, put them in the holes, and they flush the rabbits out. And I was up there. I was with Woodland Park Zoo trying to figure out how to reintroduce the injured eagles, and with the idea that the time would come when they'd be captive bred, and could the birds be released back into the wild. And also, it was the first radio transmitters came out, a company called Davidson Electronics. We had access to those. And if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Foster and I came up with the first backpack. The transmitters were really big, and we mounted them on the back, with surgical tubing and different kinds of webbing to mount those. And it's a pretty neat time. So I had access to all these eagles coming through, and then to evaluate them, whether they could be released. One of the things we wanted to be able to evaluate, if they were released with no preparation, just patched up and then turned loose, what would happen to them? Or do they need to have some physical conditioning? And sure enough, the birds that we just patched up and released, I would find them starving. But the birds that I flew hard, some of the birds didn't even train and fly. I just put them on the end of a rope and scare the hell out of them, and they'd fly, and they would strengthen up, and we could turn them loose that way. And then I got permission to train some of them, hunt with them, and then turn them loose to see if they'd be a danger to people. But they weren't. They were wild birds, although we did have 2 imprints. And what I did with those imprints was, when they were muscled up, was that go out to their perches and thrash them with a leash and, scare the crap out of them, turn them loose, and they never bothered anybody after they were scared really badly.
So an aggressive imprint could be conditioned to be afraid of people by those actions.
Yeah.
So if we tried that with the falconry bird, though, it'd just fly away.
Yeah, right. And that was a pretty neat time, because it was a 5-year stretch that I had just unlimited access to eagles through the Woodland Park Zoo.
Wow.
I want to carry on the eagle thing, but I do want to ask, since we're on the subject, me and Casey have wondered this, and I don't know about you, Casey, but I've never bothered to Google it. San Juan rabbits that we breed in captivity for running dogs or training hawks, are those the same rabbits?
Yes, the same genera, same species, essentially. And the reason they were called that is that during that time, during the 50s and into the 70s, when they were so common, people would come up and just harvest them and then sell them. And some of those rabbits were then, again, turned into domestic rabbits to run dogs. And that's why they were called San Juans. Oh, we had some great times. we could fly them with our goshawks and our eagles, flush them off the ground. But one of the most fun things we did, there's a tavern up there on the island called Herb's Tavern. We go in there and drink beer until it was really dark, and then we go out at night, and the rabbits would run along in front of our vehicles, and we'd put somebody on the hood of the car that had a few beers, and you run up on a rabbit, slam on the brakes, bolt them off the car. You hit the ground with one or two foot strikes, and then you dive with a forward roll and come up with a rabbit. We really did that.
That's awesome.
We're gonna try that, the Jersey meat.
Yeah, if you can get the rabbits running in the lights, and you've got somebody you can trust, because when you slam on the brake, you're not supposed to run over them.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
All right, Casey. Phil is not driving. Okay.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Okay. And we even trained our dogs that are short hair. Dora would ride on the truck. I had a 1964 Chev panel, and I could load the back end with people that were injured, and they gave it a try. And we put my dog on the front, and she would stay until I slammed the brakes, and she'd go jump off the truck and then catch the rabbits and retrieve them.
That sounds like class.
Now, do those rabbits run because San Juans that we breed for training and stuff like that? They don't run so good. The ones in
San Juan,
wild ones that they run.
Yeah, they ran like a wild European rabbit. They'd bolt from one hole. If it's in the same warren, it's like normal house footprint. There'd be all these underground channels, and they would come up, and they would bolt from one hole to the next. But if you had a ferret underground, then they would bolt to go to the next warren, and that could be, a 50-yard flight, and we'd fly our goshawks and red tails. And I had the good fortune, Don Barry, Wally English, and Dr. Foster at the Woodland Park Zoo. If they bred the first captive bred Harrisawks, or they were one of the first. And Les Boyd got one tiercel, I got the second tiercel, and we did not know what to make of Harrisawks. That weird tick they had, no feathers around their beak, and they fly, slower than a goshawk, but faster than a red tail. And they're making that weird, growling sound. And so we called them, we made a joke out of it. We called them Polish goshawks, and we'd make the Polish jokes were common at the time. And, nobody hoods a Harrisawk. So, but at that time, I was pretty good at hooding, and I thought I should hood one, and then it didn't make sense. So I took the eye patterns and a 3-piece hood, took the eye patterns out, put it on his hood so he could look out. so
should have just flown him with that hood on. It becomes a helmet at that point.
We did. We had to narrow the front so they get binocular vision. But that one tiercel learned to fly with his head to the side so he could see the rabbit, and then he would turn to get binocular, and then he'd miss him. So, we did all kinds of dumb stuff.
So as you know from having spent some time in the South, you may know this. We call those San Juans redback rabbits down here.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
in Georgia. I'm assuming it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Be careful, Aaron.
It's a European rabbit that's been domesticated, but then they'll go feral again, and that's what they did in the San Juans. And the story is that people used to raise rabbits in large numbers to sell commercially. Well, the bottom fell out of the market on San Juan, so they just turned them loose, and that's what seeded them. And they're
Are they still there?
I don't think so.
They're there. They are still there, but the numbers are not
really
anywhere
low.
near what they used to be when Steve was there in the glory days.
So before Steve killed them all, or after Steve killed them.
Looks like what happened is some ferrets escaped and worked them over. Then somebody brought fox up to the island, and then the red fox, keep their numbers down. But at the time I was up there, it was unbelievable, the numbers.
Yeah, I heard about all this San Juan, rabbits up there, and I flew up there from Squim. It's about a 15-minute flight across 40 miles of water, and rented a car, and I knew they were on Cattle Point, and
Yes.
there was warrens there. I didn't see any rabbits. I was there during the middle of the day, but all around the other island, probably places where Steve hunted, it's all been populated. People own every square inch of that island, except the park.
Somebody introduced myxomatosis on the island also.
Oh, I think that's right.
Out the,
I think
wiped out
right,
the population.
Jeff. Yeah.
Hat Island in Puget Sound, I've heard, has feral rabbit populations that are very much like the glory days of San Juan Island, but I never went out there to check it out.
Those rabbits are really interesting. The little town of Langley, it's about 7 miles from us, had rabbits who were turned loose, and they had a population around the fairground in the city for a good 20 or 30 years. And they stay in town in people's yards. If they go out of town, the coyotes, the great horned owls get them, and it kind of controls the population. And an interesting thing happened when that virus that killed rabbits, jackrabbits and everything, went through, knocked them out, killed them in Friday Harbor in that area. The rabbits survived are all black rabbits. So having that black gene in there helped them resist that virus. And we've got some a researcher that's looking at that as a potential study.
Black don't crack.
I was just going to say, Casey, you're going to have to resist making a joke about that.
Black don't crack. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All right. So, Steve, on the subject of eagles, it's my understanding that you trained a free flight bald eagle for Georgia Southern University.
Yes. Yeah. 30 years ago, Steve Hine, he was the director of the Wildlife Center. He heard about me handling eagles quite a bit. So he got in touch with me and the Georgia Southern Eagles, and they had a bald eagle. And there you go. And so I worked with Steve, and we trained their first mascot to fly from the skybox down over the football field to his fist. But one day they had firecrackers and stuff going off, and there was smoke in the air, and that eagle stayed on wing, and I was on wing for maybe 5 minutes before it finally came down. So that became part of the magic of that eagle. We shaped it to wait on over the stadium and fly, just wingtip off the people before she came down. And it died about a year and a half ago. And now they've got a new bald eagle that we're training, that Steve's training. He's got all the knowledge now, and I just get to have the fun.
Now, were there any roadblocks to using a bald eagle for those purposes? Yeah,
there was. And it was a non-releasable eagle. And but there were senators and congressmen involved, and it was for an institution and not for falconry. And it's a great part of their tradition down there. And because of that it's just not on display, but it's the mascot being flown, and a huge amount of money goes to the Wildlife Center, and they do some incredible conservation work down there in association with the Wildlife Center.
We jumped straight to eagles, but we want to talk about how you got into falconry in the first place. What year did you do it, and what were the circumstances behind that?
This kid come up before, and so I've been having lots of dreams and remembering that time. And I think my story is very much like yours and a lot of other people. And I've got a background in zoology and anthropology, and I think this fascination with raptors, it's on the coat of arms. Just about every culture has some sort of symbolism with raptors. And I think it goes right back to our past as hunter and gatherers. and that when we're moving out across the landscape and we see a bird of prey going to the ground, we know almost at the brainstem level, if we show up over there, we can steal it from them and eat it. And as a kid, I got that figured out. And so I had my, classic, Benjamin, pump up, pellet gun, go hunt rabbits with my basset hounds, my parents' basset hounds. And I would disturb a good 2 or 3 miles worth of creek bank on a tandem creek. And I'd get home and I'd put the dogs back in their kennels. And then I'd go back and retrace my steps, without my gun. And I knew that just like a tractor moving through or cattle moving through, the birds are attracted to that activity and catch the disrupted mice or even rabbits. So it'd take me a good hour or two to get back there. And I knew that there were 3 pair of wild red tails on that stretch, two pair that I had regular access to. And I would wander and my steps, and I would find them on a rabbit and bump them off, and I'd take the rabbit home to let my grandmother cook it, and she'd cook it for me. But she got really ticked when she realized what I was doing. I was stealing the rabbits from the red tails. I mean, she was a very moral lady, and with my grandfather, gave me a pocket knife. We made an agreement that the red tails couldn't eat the whole thing, so I'd cut off the back legs and leave the other part for them. And sure enough, when the red tails caught stuff, I'd bump them. They sit in a tree. I'd take my part, walk off, and they come down. And every time I would show up down there with the dogs, they'd got to the point where they'd follow along until we got far enough away, catch one, tie the dogs up, go back, cut off my part of it, let them have it, and down they come. So I believe that's the origins of falconry right there. I think it's in our DNA to do that. That when we're on the move, you look at the general public when you have your birds on hand, and they're fascinated with birds of prey, and I think it's a real soft instinct.
Before I was a falconer, I trained a mockingbird. Every time I mowed the grass, it would show up and eat the katydids.
Yes.
So when it heard the lawnmower start, it would fly over and sit on the fence, and it would follow me down the fence line.
And another one like that, we call barn swallows mosquito falcons. Walk through a field with grass, and the barn swallows will follow you in mosquito hawk. It just, yeah. And I grew up during a time when there were no laws against having wildlife. Matter of fact, the Department of Wildlife, they would even pay bounties for shooting of hawks. And so I grew up having pet magpies and pet crows and pet robins. And I had a great mom that would help us, my buddies and I, feed them, make sure we figured out the right food to feed them. And so in the little town of Union Gap, there were always a bunch of magpies and crows, and then we started, getting kestrels to train. We, went to the library and saw the what was it? It was the Sport of Kings, and then the Craigheads with their in that 1934 article with the Craigheads in it, right before in the 40s, just before the Second World War.
And what state was this in?
Washington State.
Okay. So that's the roots of it. But as far as actually starting, what we would call proper falconry, how did that begin for you?
Surprisingly enough, it was just the images in those books of somebody hunting them, and I just figured out, don't feed them as much. And the first game I took was with a kestrel turning over bales of hay and catching mice under the microtus under the bales of hay, and so it was just a natural problem. And in the community I was in, Mike Radford and I, we've had long discussions that in the community I grew up in, and when he grew up on the East Coast, everything was hunting. If you had the birds as they were pets, definitely, but we hunted them. That was the end goal, was try to figure out how to catch game with them. And like Department of Wildlife they thought they're going to have to regulate falconry to keep us from killing so much game, right? So you find that catching stuff is not easy.
Amen. So were there any falconry mentors for you along the way?
There was my falconry mentor, basically, was in the books of my mom. And then there was a gentleman by the name of Dick Hughes. He went to school. He had the big cement products plant in Yakima, and he went to school on the East Coast, and he knew those East Coast falconers. So he had some books, and we borrowed them, but he didn't fly any birds or anything. We just had the books. Yep. And that you're an educator, and you're, Casey, you're homeschooled. So reading is a real important thing. And I had a real difficult time learning how to read. But once I developed a passion, and nobody else had the information on the hawks and how to figure it out, it was only in books. And that was my stimulation to learn how to read.
It's true. Yeah. I was the same way.
Really?
I hate reading to this day, but like like anything about falconry, that's what like pushed me to like, dude, I got to learn how to read these words so I can learn.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can learn from pictures, Steve. At a certain point,
you ought to hear him trying to mouth out the word fly. He's like, he looks at the word and he's like,
phonics. Yes. Yeah. Phonics were my the only way falconry and phonics. Yeah. Because it wasn't going to come from just sight reading.
So a lot of early falconers who practiced back in the day when information was not so readily available had challenges catching game. They considered a season where they caught a couple things a great season.
Yeah.
Did you
I think the reason for that is that most people get into falconry because of the attraction of the birds, and they don't have dogs. Mike and I have talked about this a lot, and I was really fortunate in our community. There were a couple guys, Mr. Dutton, he had beagles, and he hunted during the winter, and follow him. So we immediately we got hounds to run, and we shot our BB guns and pellet guns at them. And so getting the hawks, just having them for a pet, because I had pet magpies and crows and things like that. But get the hawk was to catch something. So my first kestrel, I caught those mice, and then we got red tails, and then we caught cottontails, and that was the whole goal.
Mm-hmm. When did you get your first goshawk?
First goshawk. I was up in the San Juans when we were working with the eagles, and there was a guy named Russ Taylor, and he took an imprint goshawk over in the Blue Mountains. So he brought it up to me, drop it off to let me train it and hunt it. So that was the first goshawk that I caught game with. And then I got a kind of a steady stream of secondhand screwed up exhibitors, everything from, Finnish birds, East Coast goshawks, and just trial and error, figuring out how to deal with them. And it was way fun. So, since then I always like to have a goshawk on hand.
Mm-hmm. And how many years ago was that?
That would have been in the 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. But I really had cut my teeth on prairie falcons and red tails. That's where I spent a good part of my Eastern Washington desert landscape is flying prairies, imprints as well as passage birds and a couple passage gyrfalcons.
What was your experience with imprint red tails?
Imprint red tails? I'd climb the trees, and I would take them to my mom, and she'd take them to work, and we hand fed them all. And we had aggression problems and screaming problems, but we just, the secret to it was just start hunting. And then all those problems went away. And even now when I handle my goshawks, I hand feed them and interact with them. And, I think, Aaron, you might appreciate this analogy or metaphor, is that imagine having identical twins, human beings, and one you send to an orphanage. And at the orphanage, they just make sure they're healthy and feed them, no affection or interaction with them. And the other child goes into a family where they get to cry, kick, scream, fight over food and do the same thing. Some of the research coming out of I believe it was out of the Second World War. It's been a long time since I've thought about this, but the kids raised in orphanages would be as much as 10 IQ points less than the kids raised in families would have all that social interaction. So I've watched over the years of having a number of different birds come through my hands, and the no food association birds that, feathers tight and everything, I don't think are as smart. And the birds that come out of the wild, passage birds, they've had all that interaction in the nest. And as a biologist, all the screaming, mantling, all the behavior that Nick Fox book, he calls it maladaptive behavior, must be highly adaptive, because they all do it, from kestrels to golden eagles, this social interaction, all the intense emotions. They recognize adults and they treat siblings differently. And I believe it has to do with neural development. So when I raise my imprints, I let them get all emotionally upset, take food away from them. They get food, they mantle, and we establish table manners so I don't get hurt, or other people don't get hurt. And I think those birds are way better. Geoff, you saw soul duck.
Yeah.
And skeeter. And we call them hardcore imprints. And yeah.
So when you say
soul
duck was tamer than most parrots.
Yeah. But he went through that phase of a lot of emotional intensity. One of the things I could do, he'd perceive me as a parent, or I changed my behavior and he perceived me as a sibling. And I played both roles to bring out all that emotion as a parent and as a sibling. And then, when it became an adult, he viewed me as his mate, as a female.
You have an idea that a traditional imprint doesn't view you as a parent. They view it as a sibling. They view you as a sibling.
That's right.
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that, isn't it, Steve?
Yes, true. Yes.
I mean, if
a lot more nuanced.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to take over this aspect of the conversation. I just want to try and yeah, right. I just want to try and prod Steve to extrapolate a little bit. But in a goshawk social order, it's much more limited than in human social order. In the goshawk social world, they have siblings, they have rivals, they have parents, and they have offspring. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And at various stages, an imprint goshawk will view the humans in its world as one of those components, because their basic social software isn't complex enough to think of you as anything else.
Yeah.
You want to expand on that, Steve? You and I have had hours of conversation
about
just that one topic.
Yeah. I think when the interaction on the fist, it would be a good thing to insert here, operant conditioning, and the way to, insert yourself into bits of behavior. And with a secondary, Radford and I've had quite a bit of conversation on this, is that I can modify. So my food association, I'm literally I let my birds feed on the glove. I hand food to them. They can either perceive me as being that sibling and will be aggressive over it, or I can be the parent handing the food to them. And then as they mature, then, as Geoff talked about, we can become the mate, that aspect. And as a result of that, we can interact with them literally at a genetic level, just as if we're another raptor, another goshawk interacting with them, and develop those personalities. Geoff, want to add to that again?
No, I think you covered it. Yeah.
Steve, is it a fluid? Is it a fluid thing? Because I did a hardcore imprint once. She definitely had behavioral issues, but she was the best bird that I've flown in terms of head count and stuff like that. But is it like because I know so they want to mantle and protect their food from their siblings. So my point is if you're raising from day one, hand feeding hardcore, and I was told to not feed by hand if the bird is expressing any type of negative behavior, something you don't like. So if the bird's screaming or walking towards you or act even before they're even feathered, then you wouldn't necessarily reach out and hand food to them because you're kind of reinforcing that if they're acting aggressive, it's a behavior that you don't want to see. You wouldn't just go ahead and hand them food. You wait until they're in a static, calm position and then hand them food. So that's kind of the way I did it with that bird. Yeah. But my question is it a fluid thing? Will they go from viewing you as the parent and then wanting to kind of defend their food from you, like as if you're a sibling? And is it something that you have to continuously reinforce? And can it go switch back and forth? Yeah. Is that, what I'm, are you getting what I'm saying? My question?
Yes. To give you an idea about an event came to mind. Tom Gleason, a good friend, it was back in the Hawk-L days, of the internet, very primitive. And then Harry McElroy was in a group. We were talking, and I was imprinting a Cooper's hawk, and it was hand feeding it. And then a conversation was a private conversation between Tom and Harry. It was obvious Tom was coming through my area regularly collecting owl pellets. That's what his business was at the time. And he saw me doing it, and I wasn't getting any aggression and, shaping, because Gaton was the Cooper's hawk's name. And she perceived me as an adult, as one of her parents. So she wasn't going to fly into my eyes or hurt me. You hurt your parents and you could starve to death. So I was, zeroed in on that, no screaming and mantling. And then Harry asked Tom, and he didn't realize that all 3 or 4 or 5 of us were in on the question. I said, well, Layman can get away with this, but if other people try it, somebody's going to get hurt, lose an eye, get some injury. And then the question came up was, if that bird would become aggressive, then what happens? So I thought it was a fair challenge. So when Tom would come through, I would start taking food away from it and rewarding those aggressive behaviors. I was already hunting, and I was catching, sparrows, and then he was good at catching crows, carhawking crows, and I had she had really good behavior without all the negatives. And so Tom was here, and I'm looking over here at the kitchen table, and said, let's see how long it takes, to get really aggressive behavior. It only took about 4 or 5 days. And I had horror in my, a good friend who was an employee of mine, he was afraid to get in the car. He wore safety glasses for the time with, this Cooper's hawk could take over. So now I've got this flaming, dangerous imprint Cooper's hawk. And so I didn't know if I could turn it around, but using, shaping behavior, using operant conditions, secondary reinforcement, as shape looking away from me, it started, looking away, not looking at me, shaping behavior to pull feathers in, stand with good posture, non-aggressive posture, and started hunting with her. But the part that was funny is that I was having good success with this bird before all of this happened. But after the aggression was in and this really hostile imprint behavior, her hunting behavior and success rate went up. And I finally figured it out was that when we went out hunting, she was just not hunting to feed herself, but she was competing with me. Mm. I could fly her with a half a crop. And if I acted like I was hunting, looking for the crows, she'd go get them to keep me from getting them. I even took a dead crow and throw it out on the floor. Restraint pursuit is that when they fly after something, hold on to the leash. And so we can get into that, how I came up with the idea that instead of looking like a bad idea, it's a good idea. And so she's flying like crazy after this dead crow. And then I pulled her back. And so I'm head to head with her. And then I gain and put my hand out. And I could feel her try even harder. And boom, I'd let it go. She'd grab it and I'd leave. And she won. So all this intensity, hunting wise, got to the point weight managed was not an issue. All she was interested in was starving me to death. Yeah, it was all about territory.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
What was this Cooper's Hawk's name again?
Gaton. Get it on.
Wasn't that one Claymora?
Oh, you're right. That was Claymora. Right. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, old man memory. Geoff is exactly right. Yeah.
So Steve.
Claymora for a Claymore mine. That was it. Yeah, because it's going to explode in your face. That's where that came from. Yeah,
I like that. That's
thanks,
good.
Geoff.
So Steve, with that, because I remember me and you discussed years ago, and I had that one bird that was exceptional. Weight management wasn't an issue. She flew at like 1,300 grams, like way too heavy. Field control wasn't super good, but anything that moved anywhere, anytime, she was catching it. And I think like you looked at some of my videos or something, and we discussed, and then that was the first time I ever heard that was you said, "Oh, that bird's just trying to get it before you do." That bird looks at you as a sibling, and she doesn't want you to have anything to do with it. Right. But she was real aggressive on the kill early on. She would, she would. It was my first experience flying a Siberian hybrid, and she would like jump off the kill and go like, not for my feet, none of that. She would jump off the kill and go straight for my face.
Yeah.
Real aggressive. And between Philalia and conversations with you, we developed a system to kind of stay back, give her space. And I would actually trade her off from like literally 30 feet away. I would toss tidbits at her.
Yes.
And then she would like run out and grab the tidbit, run back to her, her kill.
Yeah.
Then run out. And then I would make like a little breadcrumb trail to a lure. Yeah. And then when she was working towards the lure, I would stand up and calmly walk around and then pick up the carcass and put it in my bag. And then it was calm. But so now, wouldn't that be more, obviously not the aggression, but wouldn't that be more like, more beneficial to have a bird viewing as a sibling in terms of head count and field control and stuff like that? So what is the major benefit of hand feeding from day one and instilling yourself as the parent, not the sibling?
Okay. At first, it switches both ways. If I want calm behavior and handling and that kind of acceptance, that I'll be seen as the parent. I want to be seen as the parent. Siblings don't hand food to each other. Siblings take it away and hide what they've got. Parents hand food to them. So when I'm hand feeding, I literally get my face up there and they see my eyes and my fingers feeding them. And then that only parents do that. Mm. And so I can bring it in and out. And I see Mike sitting there, and I remember a conversation I had with him early on, is that falconry is more than a hunting sport. It's a natural history sport. Everything we're talking about here is natural history, trying to take those natural history insights and bring them into our relationship with them. And they begin to view us like another raptor. Behaviorally, we may not look like one, but behaviorally, we're taking advantage of that opportunity.
Steve's mom and he can, if might be wrong, but his mom would take the bird, his red tails at the time, whether it's a goshawk red tail or a Cooper's hawk, whatever, to work with it, right, Steve? And she would hand feed it. And she did just what Steve is describing, and the bird never attacked his mother, ever.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
That's where he figured this out, was way back, It's like everybody talks about, getting or not getting an imprint red tail. I mean, it's like having a small eagle grab you, and it wouldn't be much fun, especially in the face. And his mom had no problems with it. But on the other end of it, if it looks like it looks at you as a sibling, and you can watch for that behavior.
Yeah.
That's the main thing is educating people on what we're seeing, right? And I've had a passage goshawk tiercel that I was training it, entering it on snowshoe hares, and it grabbed one, and I went over there and dispatched the rabbit. And then I went around to the back of the hawk, and it's leaned over mantling. Now, this is a passage bird, and it came off of that rabbit and darn near hit me in the face and went right back to the rabbit. And it taught me all kinds of stuff. It's like, when they're doing what they're doing, leave them alone, and let them have their space. And Steve and I were hunting Sybil last 2 years ago at NAFTA, and he was watching her on a rabbit, and he goes, "Just leave her alone." She's mantling, and she was really screaming. She was a hardcore imprint, and the thing about Sybil is she never was aggressive towards me, but by God, she'd warn me. Remember that, Steve?
Yeah.
How she would just had her time on the kill. We want to get on and get it going, get another one. And you just got to give them that space on the kill and let them mellow out a little bit and start plucking, and then maybe breaking in. And people say, "Oh, don't let them break in." Well, if you got a well-trained bird, it doesn't make any difference to me. They're going to eat, and they trade off, and they're happy. And then you can go on, after a few minutes and get another one.
That you meant, Mike mentioned plucking behavior, and in the old books they talk about a tearing, training passage birds, or tearing that gives you something for them to eat, so you can walk around while it's eating. That mans himself if you've got a tearing, but eventually they get too much to eat, and if you notice, Mike mentioned it. They catch a rabbit. They go through a period of time where they're killing it, and there's a natural history when why does a rabbit squeal when it's caught? Is it in pain? Yeah, but they're actually their own predator call. They're calling for the coyote to show up to bump the hawk off so they can run away, or they'll scream for the great horned owl to show up and kill your hawk, and then it gets away. So, looking at the natural history wise, they catch something. They know that something's seen the hunting flight. It screams. They kill it, and instead of starting to eat immediately and get a full crop and encumber themselves so they can't maneuver and get away, they pluck. They go through a long period of time where they pluck, and that's during the time they're waiting to see if somebody else, so they can flush unencumbered. So I got to thinking about that plucking behavior and how to prolong it. So what I do now, even with what I've got now, I'll give a chicken wing, with lots of primaries and stuff on it and not much meat. And when they're plucking, that's an instinctive behavior. I sound the secondary reinforcer, whistle, and give them a tidbit. So essentially, I'm rewarding them for plucking. And I can extend the plucking stage as a long time. So with a passage bird or my imprint, if I want to have that special time with them, instead of plucking at a piece of meat and then they go, "There's not any meat here," then they just drop it on the ground, I can extend that tearing time for a long period of time. And it goes on a high variable ratio. Those pluck, 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 end of a tidbit. Pluck, 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 pluck. It's not a one-to-one end of a tidbit. They'll even pluck and then sit there and look at me. Well, give me a tidbit for doing the plucking. And where that works out nicely is when they're on quarry and they've killed them, we're backing off. And as soon as they start to pluck, that is their cue for me to walk over and give them the tidbit.
Right.
And so now my imprints are easy to make in on. So if I have to help dispatch, I walk away. And then when they start to plucking, I'm now inside their head, and they're looking up, and like you and I, Casey, throwing the tidbits out, but while they're on the fist plucking, reinforce that it's literally a trained behavior. So when they're on the ground, they're inviting you to show up to hand them the tidbit.
Oh, that's good. That is very cool. Steve's running his falconry training like a casino.
Yeah.
Steve, you told me once a real interesting story about being out in the field with Doug Pinio in particular, and I believe the bird was Skeeter, where you were first playing with these concepts.
Yeah.
And to remind you of this story, you had Skeeter leaving the kill to come get the tidbits at one point. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah. It was over in the Tri-Cities. Yeah.
So he would kill.
So what would happen? He'd run over, leave the core, run over and get the tidbits. If he wanted more tidbits, he would run back to the quarry and pluck some more, and then leave the quarry, come to get some tidbits, and then he would just sit there and wait and pluck, and then I'd walk up and he would step up to the glove. And the other thing I would do, Doug and I had a special relationship, is that instead of putting the quarry away, I would just hold it in my right hand, and you would expect Skeeter to go after it and be baiting at it, and he wouldn't. And we'd walk along and flush another rabbit, and he'd leave my glove, go after the next rabbit, because catching that rabbit was the way to get to this one. Baiting straight at the rabbit didn't work.
Wow. Yeah. That's fascinating. It's actually
all this information is really, really, really good to stack in your brains, and food for thought for somebody that maybe having difficulty or wondering what to do next. It's high-end stuff, really high-end stuff, because, you see people just going in, trading off the bird, because the bird's screaming hungry, and, and then they get it on their glove and they don't do any of this, and they go for another rabbit or whatever. But it's pretty cool when you got a bird that's looking at you. Hey, I plucked. I want something to eat for that. And people don't know what you did in the background to accomplish that behavior. And it's hours and hours of thinking about it and doing it. And, and then go into the field and the bird plucks a little bit and the rabbit's dead. And you hold out your glove and the bird jumps up on your glove. And you're like, how cool is that? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Well,
and another one that comes to mind is that when a bird's on the glove eating and plucking, and so they're eating, they're used to being handed tidbits, and so sound the condition reinforcer, throw a tidbit, they leave the glove, food in the glove, and fly and get the tidbit, and then they come back. And they'll even hesitate looking for another tidbit. You hold off and they go back to eating, sound and throw it. Then, after doing that 2 or 3 times, they come back to the glove. There's no food there. And they look down and you start walking. And they start hunting again. And they want to get more. They love that social interaction. Go catch another one.
It's absolutely fascinating, and it's like if you're training a goshawk or an imprint, you're basically all of this stuff that's being discussed. It's going on whether you're intentionally doing it or not.
That's right,
and it's either going to be a very negative experience for you and the bird or your dogs, or you're going to be consciously aware of what's going on and use it to your advantage.
Well, not necessarily, Casey. There's a lot of people out there that may not be aware at a high conscious level of how operant conditioning is working. Operant conditioning is just the basic laws of learning, crystallized in in a set of terminology, so that if you understand that terminology, you can work with it at a high level. But anytime any two animals are interacting with each other, they're using the basic processes that operant conditioning is working on, whether you're aware of it or not. And just being unaware of those concepts doesn't mean you're going to be having negative training experiences. I've met a lot of brilliant trainers that have no idea what operant conditioning is or any of that terminology, but they're still using those same concepts to be very successful at training.
Right.
There's a word being tossed around right here, conscious. They're bird conscious. And I, over the last couple months, I've relived a memory when I was taking chemistry in college. You know, this format, as Mike and Geoff I kind of pace it off in weird directions, but we'll pull it together here, is that I was in a chemistry class, organic chemistry. It was about carbon. And I'm sitting there in the audience, you know, with a group of students, and I realized that we're all made of carbon. And here we were in chemistry talking about carbon. Well, carbon on the periodic table, carbon 3, carbon 4 is spelled with a C, and I caught myself realizing that I was conscious of carbon. So, is there something about the fundamentals of life itself, or even at the atomic level, is it conscious or not? And Dr. Neuschwander caught me staring at it, and he said my name a couple times, and at first I was just aware of it. And he finally got my attention, and he asked me, he said, "Do you want to share with us all?" And he thought I was stoned. Yeah, thought I was really stoned. And he told me to leave the class, and he pointed the door. So I got up and told me to go to Dr. Dumas's office. Luckily, Dr. Dumas is a really good friend. And sat down and we had a conversation about consciousness. And Michael Pollan, the author, he's got the world. This book is all about what is consciousness. And so early on in my falconry, you know, the general thought about our birds are just, you know, lizards with feathers, but they are conscious. They think at the level of consciousness, the way they interact with us. And once we get to that level, that we share something in common, conscious, and every one of you have said it in this conversation. And so our relationship with these hawks that we hunt with is really, really special. And I think the question is how to get started. You know, how does it happen? I think it's in our DNA to do this. And that's when I get so upset about, you know, when I've got a granddaughter now that's flying, you know, really good red tail. And then the laws that, you know, the powers that be want to sever that relationship, want to overregulate it, you know, so we don't have this relationship that goes clear back into our DNA. And that's kind of the thing I want to make sure, you know, the next generations can do and appreciate. And Aaron, you as an educator, you know, boy, yeah.
I'm constantly trying to educate Casey, Steve.
Yeah.
That's my main goal as an educator.
I'm too dense.
Tell them about that. This is just another story, but tell them about that time you operant conditioned your instructor.
Okay. Well, and that ties in with getting kicked out of the chemistry class, because about 10 days before that, I got kicked out of the Dr. Barker's genetics class. And so when I went back, when I got kicked out of the chemistry class, and he says, Dr. Dumas said, "Now what?" And that was referring to Dr. Barker. So when I came time to graduate, I didn't have enough breadth requirement, like humanities, like, you know, art, you know, psychology, anthropology, whatever. So they made an agreement. I didn't have to. All I had to do was audit the class and just show up. And so I didn't have to take Psych 101, 102. So if it fit into my schedule, my teaching schedule, I could go sit in on the graduate level in psychology, where they were really, shaping bar pressing rats and pigeons. And so that's my introduction into operant conditioning, and set into some, high level, senior graduate level. And we got to talking about different kinds of primary reinforcer. Food would be one, but if we're males and we're in the dating, sphere, primary reinforcer would be recognition from a good-looking woman. So Dr. Barker, he was short, and he had a very dry lecture, cadence to him. It was just boring as all get out. He stood behind a podium. He was short, and he had a box he had to stand on, so it was up high enough that he could look over the podium, and he had the little light that came over, and he had his notes, and we were sitting back, in there. So I looked at him, and I'm taking notes, and then I got to wondering, I bet you this guy's primary reinforcer is to have a class that's interested in what he's talking about. And I thought, I wonder what would be the reward for that. Pay attention, look up, and look interested in taking notes. And so everybody in the room were just, kind of dull-faced, taking notes. So I talked to my two friends that were behind me, and I said, I asked them, every time I look up, you look up. Don't put a dumb smile on, but look like you're interested and taking notes. When I put my head down, put your head down. It took a few lectures that the criterion was anytime he moved, he got up on the podium from the left side, and then to get him to move to his left and see if I get him to step off the box. And darned if it wasn't working. And then he stepped off the box, but he wouldn't let go of the podium. And looking, and finally my two buddies, they started laughing. And then what was happening? He was mad at them. So I told him that was my, I was the cause of it. And he, well, what is whatever the cause of it? And he pointed at the door and kicked me out of class. So I was in Dr. Dumas's office, and he said, Layman, why are you here? And, I had reputation of not being disturbing in classes. And I told him, and he went, no way that happened. And so we sat there and talked, and Dr. Barker came in. I stepped out of the office, and it was all glass all the way around with the bookshelves in the back. And as he's talking to Dr. Barker, he looks at me like it really did happen.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
You taught the instructor to get off the box by operant conditioning a reward by them paying attention.
Yes. And so that's that. So in our social interactions with the birds, it's not all about food. There's like Radford's red-tailed, Passie's bird. How many eggs has she laid?
Four this year. She's been laying for about 3 years now. 4 years.
So she switched into an imprint, and he caught her, covered up, strobe light, no fear, made that progression. Yeah.
You think you can inseminate her, Mike?
Oh yeah. She stands for me, presents. She'll
what? That's crazy.
Rub back, and tail will go up and go over to the side, and her wings come down. She just, In about
you need to find some sort of weird donor to try it out.
Hey, I've got some Goshawk semen to mail you, Mike.
Okay, good. I'll do it. But it was funny because Justin Rondeau, which is another one of Steve's apprentices from way back, probably as far back as Geoff, and he says, "You ought to mate her, and you'll have one of two things: a real fast." A real slow goshawk or a real fast red tail.
That would be a cool combo.
A neurotic red tail or a laid back goshawk.
Or what?
A neurotic red tail or a laid back goshawk.
Yeah.
For Justin that likes to smoke joints.
Yeah.
Steve, I got a question for you about the operant conditioning. I mean, we know it works with all birds, but do you feel like accipiters are more receptive to it, or is it imprints in general are more receptive to it?
They're all receptive once you understand the concepts and their like application.
There's just more of a demand for this stuff to be employed with the accipiters to get them to do what we want.
To modify behavior. It's just a way of communicating. From the bird standpoint, when our relationship, we don't have to use a secondary reinforcer. It's just looking at behavior they want and responding in a way they would like to have you respond. And also on the operant conditioning, the rewards, there's a two-edged sword. Negative reinforcement is just as powerful. So in hooding, one of the techniques I use in hooding is I'll bring the hood up to a bird. I did this at a California meet, and we were talking about positive and negative reinforcement. And Jim is his first name. He was a chiropractor. He walked up with a tiercel peregrine, and he said, "This bird's really hood shy." And he had a hood in his hand, and he tried to hood it, and it went flat-headed and turned into a cobra head and rocked back. And the bird was really, really frightened. And the body language from him is like, "Okay, if you're so sharp, hood this bird." And so I looked at it and realized that there was kind of a challenge there. And I said, "Do that again." That bird, its fear of the hood was really visceral. I mean, the wing butts came out, stand up, head flare, head flat, turn the cobra hood on, and he'd take the hood away. And I said, "Oh, I'll give it a try." So I got the bird on my fist, put the hood up, and it would see, and it would even baited once. And so I knew that any closer than that would cause a bait. It took me about 25 or 30 minutes of removing the negative. If it looked directly at it, I whistle and remove the negative. So it thought, staring at the hood would make the hood stop in its tracks and go away. So when he would look at the hood and I'd whistle and I'd see him relax. So I knew that distance he was comfortable with. So by removing the negative, the bird thought it had total control of the hood. By looking at it, the fear of it went away. And then I was able to hood it. So another way to look at it would be, let's say up in Mike's country, you're on a stream and you're fishing for salmon, and you come around a little bend and there's a great big grizzly bear, and you look at it, the bear looks at you, you scream and run the other direction. And as you run, you look over your shoulder, the bear drops down and it goes the other direction. The next time you're out fishing, the same thing happens. And as you're running, you think, I wonder if the scream is causing the bear to run away. So then you walk down the trail and you see the bear, look at it, and you scream, and it backs away, but it doesn't charge you. How many times would your fear of the bear go away if you had 100% chance of modifying its behavior? So this falcon had a way to deal with this negative, and you could see the fear going away, had a total control of it. And then I just upped the criteria and was able to hood it. So the operant conditioning is not just the giving of a primary reinforcer food. It can be other subtle behaviors.
Yeah.
And can be, and so a bird, I wrote an article called Hawk Whispering. Basically, it had to do with picking a bird up off a perch. And as you walk toward, the bird's fearful, looks to the left and right, and then baits. And, a lot of birds have to pick up, strip them up, get them on the glove, and you've got this negative scene that goes on at the block or at the bow perch. And the one that I decided to do was a secondhand goshawk. And walking up to pick her up was always a negative. So as I walked toward her, if she looked to her left and right and get ready to bait, so I sound the secondary reinforcer and I'd walk away. And so each time I walk up to her, I would do that, and she very quickly, she had a way to stop me in my tracks and move away. But I knew she'd be getting hungry as the days progressed. So I would walk up showing food, and she would lean forward. I would show her the food. But as I got into that uncomfortable spot, if she went to the left and right, I would, oh, you want me to leave? She gave me a cue to leave, and I would leave. And the day it happened, she looked at me, went like that, and I moved, and she went, no, 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 no. She just kept looking at me really, really intently. I'd walk toward her. If she looked the slightest bit apprehensive, I'd let her know, oh, you don't want me? And I start, no, no, no. And all of a sudden the fear was gone. She jumped to the fist. And that she was in total control. She had cues for me to walk forward. And she was perched right out there, and I'd come to the house and she'd be looking at me, and I'd say, oh, you want me to get food? I'd go to the refrigerator, get food, walk out there, walk straight toward her. If she acted a little bit nervous, oh, I guess not. And then she'd go, no, 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 no. Boom. And could pick her up.
That's fine.
There was no weight control involved. I didn't put her on the scale to determine whether we could train that day, just all in the behavior.
At what point do you stop entertaining what she wants?
If it's something I don't want, then we put it on cue. She has a cue for me. My cue is that I'm, to jump to the fist, extend the glove, and that if she doesn't jump to the fist and to go in the house, then I pull it away and don't do it.
Yeah. I would imagine also if you built that entire situation, if she went from baiting away from you, you got past that point, and then she started coming after you, then you would do the exact same thing. If you come after me, I guess you don't want it, and then you would leave.
I've got a situation with this imprint I've got right now that she sees me, she wants to bait at me. I go out there, how imprints doing this, want to attack your feet and do all that. I just walk outside leash length and stand there until she jumps back to the perch. When she jumps back to the perch, I'll let up. If she's leaping at me, I'll leave.
You mentioned imprint, Steve. That's imprint what?
Goshawk.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good little tidbit for anybody. And I need more chambers, so I got one bird right now in a weathering area. And you can't the bird cannot see you feed it because it's in a weathering area, so it sees you. So basically, instead of walking in and as it's baiting at me because I'm holding a quail in my hand, which I can't hide.
Yeah.
I just stand there with the quail in front of me and I wait for the bird to just, I wait for her to calm down, jump back on her perch. And then this bird particularly, I've been doing this for over a year. This bird I haven't flown. I got it secondhand, great bird. And basically now she basically is like a fiend for the training.
Yeah.
So if I hold the quail in my hand, she starts doing all kinds of crazy stuff to try to get the food.
Yes.
It's hilarious.
Yes.
She'll jump to the left, look at me, and jump back on the perch. And then, okay. And then she'll go this way. And then when she finally goes the way that I want, then I give her the food. But it's hilarious to watch her because she starts she'll jump here, she'll jump there. She'll turn her back to me. She'll turn towards me. Then she'll jump. It's so funny. And she's literally trying to get me to give her the food by doing something.
Yes.
So it doesn't take that much effort really to get them to kind of get in the program. I don't know.
And then what's neat about that is they're stimulated by the social interaction.
Yeah.
That we think of goshawks not being social, but they are really social.
Yes.
I have two things I want. One is just a little anecdote, and then one is a genuine question. So on that subject, it's real early on in falconry as an apprentice. You'll see this is the first thing an apprentice does when they're creancing their red tail is as soon as the red tail is coming towards them, they put the glove up for the red tail to land on and get food. It's so easy to condition them to where they come to you before you put the glove up and you don't do it. They don't get food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you go and put them back on the perch, and then you walk the distance and put your glove up, and then they come. It's so easy to do. And that's a really easy way for me to at least think about operant conditioning. I want to say, Casey and Steve, what you think about this. They know when you're going to feed them. They don't even need to see the food. They know you're feeding them.
Yeah.
And it's I had the same experience with my Doberman He passed away a few years ago. He was 14. Whenever we were getting ready to go on a walk, when I got it in my mind that we were going to go on a walk, he started behaving very, he was stuck to my side. He would stand in front of me when I tried to take a step. He knew we were going on a walk, and he had no cues that I could figure out. There was nothing like I put on a certain pair of shoes or I put on gym shorts. He just knew.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that as far as like when a hawk knows? Like, I can hide the food to the best of my ability, and the hawk knows it's food time.
Yep.
You think it's some sort of supernatural ability they have?
Timing. We can get into the woo-woo part of this, of consciousness. Michael Pollan's book, and I'm open to anything, because it's like Radford and I've talked, and he's come into this sport. His nickname is Mr. Special, because I'd had a.
Now it's
there we go.
Now everybody knows.
What?
All right, everybody, call Mike Mr. Special when you talk
Special. You have his phone number. Change him to Mr. Special in your phone.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Don Hunley, Alaska, and gave me a call and said he's got this friend. He wants to get sponsored, and he told me he was accomplished airline pilot, bush pilot, all kinds of stuff, but he was over 50. So they're friends of mine, and we say anybody that gets into falconry over 50, they get to be really good with Tiercel Harrishawk. And it never goes beyond that. And so,
living up as cold of a place as he lives, Tiercel Harrishawk was never really an option for him.
Yeah, but he lives the lifestyle. He travels all the way across the country. So anyway,
well, and he was in Washington when he got into falconry. He wasn't in Alaska then.
Yeah, lived over in Squim, and so he turned into a good falconer over 50. So we call him Mr. Special.
That's funny.
He's got a big bushy beard, so I can't tell if he's smiling or frowning right now.
Who, me?
All right. Well, Steve, you had mentioned your granddaughter, her red tail, and the forces that be attempting to sever our connections. With these predators. Where are you at in terms of the government's ability to regulate falconry?
Yeah. I'd like to have Mike do it. Yeah, at the time when all the regulations hit and all of that, and the way I see it now is that birds of prey were evolving into like the beginning of the horse. At one time they were totally wild. What's the most common bird in the world? Any of you know? Except for Geoff. I think Geoff.
I know the most what is it? The most widespread is a barn owl. Is that true?
The chicken is the most common bird in the world.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yep. It's a food supply, use it for tie flying, all kinds of things. And one of the most threatened or endangered birds in the wild are the wild jungle fowl that the chicken evolved from. That this relationship with man is the new ecological niche, I call it. And anything that gets in the way of this relationship, the breeding, habitat, everything else is subverting it. And we, if we ate them like a chicken, there would be more of them. But we're doing it in terms of the art of falconry. And then in falconry, I look at as the most sophisticated natural history lifestyle there is. And with my kids, my son trained falcons all over the world. Now I've got my granddaughter, and what she's experienced and what she's learning is pretty incredibly unique. And having things get in the way or to regulate that activity is not in the best interest of the natural relationship between humans and birds of prey. And there are some forces out there. I think there's one on the East Coast trying to shut down falconry. And Yeah.
Well, people get very emotional about the birds of prey, and that's probably part of the reason why we're so interested in them is because we're emotional about them, but we're channeling it in a different way.
Yeah. Well, we're channeling in all of the ways. We're involved with the wild birds, helping with raptor research. You look at the Peregrine Fund. You look at the people. I can think of 5 or 6 that or like Les Boyd, at WSU, and he came up with and perfected artificial insemination. And his involvement as a falconer figured out the behavior, how to collect that semen. And that's benefited everything even to condors because of Les.
Yeah, the peregrine, there's the push, and it's likely to happen, the normalization of peregrine take.
Yes.
And, falconers are not viewed favorably generally by birding types and some field biologists. But it is, to your point, falconers have a large part of the credit with bringing the peregrine back to America. Right.
Lydia Ash did a article back a few years ago about the benefit of falconers towards birds of prey, and she backed it up with statistics. And anytime you're going to profess that we're better, we do a good job, or any kind of entity does a good job at doing what they're doing, backing up with statistics from the department that you're talking to or about, and those are the ones that are trying to regulate us. It kind of, I don't want to say shuts them up, but it brings their own statistics into the fray about, hey, we do excellent job, beyond excellent, as falconers benefiting birds of prey throughout the world, actually. And she brought up 10 years of studies of what falconers did for the wild bird population just in the state of Washington alone. And it was incredible. Out of 118 birds that were taken in that 10-year period, 105 were returned back to the wild in good shape. They knew how to hunt, and, they went on to probably propagate, which is far better than what Fish and Wildlife has a record of doing with a 90% kill factor, And so she's really, really up on it. She did a good job at the presentation, along with Steve.
I like to view it in taking Lydia's information and then looking at the reality of it. Our birds are considered wildlife, and that in the birds that are, quote, under the direct management of Fish and Wildlife, that if you take our birds and the wild birds, that the birds, quote, in the wild, they have a mortality rate in the first year of well over 80%. The young ones die. And then to become a reproducing adult, it's for a stable, even population. It's not increasing or decreasing. It's right around 98% mortality. All you need is that 2% that lives and reproduces to maintain that stable population. And the falconry environment, we've got, they're considered wildlife. We've got vets. We've got taking care of broken bones, all of it, nutrition. And our mortality rate is lower than those in the wild, even to the point that we can take peregrines and release them back to the wild. All the falconry techniques are used in raptor rehab. So out of this population of layman's, literally, is all this is knowledge that's coming out. And my past friend, Les Boyd, is a perfect example of getting that figured out. And then you look at all the stuff the Peregrine Fund's doing, it gets back to that instinct. We want to live with birds of prey. We like to be a part of that natural system, and we are.
Now, do you like how, let's say, England, for instance, doesn't have a permitting system for birds of prey?
Yeah.
You're a fan of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's controversial. Some people, even some people over there, wish they had an apprenticeship system to get legalized.
But the same thing can be said is that, the birds in the wild should have an apprenticeship program, because the birds in the wild have a lot of mortality. And so we're looking at the falconers getting in and learning, because I think back, when I got getting started, there was no sponsorship, but a really great mom and a bunch of books. And I figured it out just because I love the birds. I don't want to do harm to them, and get better and better. And the same thing should be with other people. If they have the desire to change their lifestyle, to do this, and then to make, association, friends with people, become a part of the community, or not. Yeah, it'll work its way out.
So what do you think about in American falconry with apprenticeship?
I think it's a good thing, but yeah,
some people would say that they feel like we're gatekeeping falconry, that we're not letting people in.
I would agree, but all it does is take, somebody to just start signing off for people, and to do it. And
that quote by Winston Churchill applies really well to the apprentice program in the U.S. It's the worst idea ever come up with, except for all the others.
Yeah. And at the same time, so the apprentice is our falconry is like the stop sign, to just stop and pause. We could do without it, just with good, we could do without it. I could live without it. My civil rights to have somebody show up unannounced to inspect, their property, however you want to play that game. Or that philosophic game, that kind of an, I'm pretty much a libertarian, and I find it is just irritating.
I'm with you, Steve. I just want to be left alone.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. And
unlike Casey likes being bothered. He has some sort of weird thing about it.
Negative. Yeah.
It makes him feel important.
Yeah, exactly. He gets all he gets blushed and thinks like, "Oh my God, they care about me. They want to come look inside my freezer. Oh my God,
I don't want anybody looking in my freezer."
Yeah. And,
all right.
Yeah.
We're talking about mortality of birds of prey, and we're all of us in this conversation are goshawk fans, to say the least. One of the first things that I ever heard about you was your method for treating or preventing Asper in goshawks. How did you come up with this? First of all, tell us about the method, and then give us the background. How'd you come up with this? Tell us about the studies that went into it, the studies that are currently happening.
Yeah. Okay. I was in college and climbing into a raptor's nest and going to the literature, and Dr. Werner was an ornithologist and collecting nests and how do birds put it together, and in a lot of birds and in raptors, one of the last things they line their nest with is conifers, and the place that's different than that is on the East Coast. Cooper's hawk used cherry bark, but as it turns out, cherry bark has the same terpenes that conifers have. So something about these hawks and birds, that there must be some reason for doing it. We say camouflage makes it more difficult to see, but the timing of putting in, it might have something to do with the gases that are being off-gassed out of those needles, and they're called terpenes. And as it turns out, they have antifungal qualities to them. And at the time when I was in college, one of the hypotheses, like cedar dog beds, to get rid of ticks and fleas. So they thought that the linings in the nest, one for camouflage, multifunctional, and the other was to slow down the reproduction of ectoparasites like ticks and fleas and things like that. And I thought that it would be an easy concept to test. And my wife at the time, Kathy, she was working on fruit flies. So I had access to a whole bunch of, fruit fly eggs and larvae and the little fruit flies. And so I exposed them to the needles, Doug fir and cedar, juniper, whatever was available on the campus, and it didn't kill them. And so, not that I could rule that out. It didn't kill them. Must have some other, purpose to it. So, with our falconry, Aspergillosis is well known. So it's a fungus. So I got a bag with oranges that were rotting, and I had some fruit bowls they set up for my controls, and then I put different kinds of material in, and then watched the rate of the decomposition of the oranges. And the ones and I put whatever was, maple leaves, whatever, and I'd put a cotton cloth over the top of it so the oranges couldn't come directly in contact with the material underneath. So it had to be the gases. And it was really obvious that the ones that rotted the slowest were the ones that had the conifers, and some conifers are more effective. So right then, I then needed to test. And so as the years went by, I'd take, chickens and pigeons and put them in a box and grind up a whole bunch of different kinds of needles, throw it in and see if it'd kill them. And it didn't. And then with my own birds, it was with solduck that I did it with. I ground up needles, those tea infusers that you can screw them and have a little chain on them. So I would put different material in. First, I would throw them out on the floor, and then I trained him to pick them up and retrieve them and bring them back to me. And I got him so he would do 5 of those, and then I'd reward him. And then I put different material in and throw it out on the floor. And the ones that I put the needles, Doug fir needles, porter cedar, any of those terpenes, he would gravitate to those. So I knew he has either the sense of smell or taste. Could not see him, but he was attracted by that. And so since college, when I raised my young accipiters, and I would line up with the needles, and I noticed that when we travel, my son and I travel, we'd put needles at the bottom of their hawk boxes so they mute on them. It's an easy way to collect it. But the other thing that's really interesting is you can have a bird that's kind of agitated, and you have some ground up needles or fresh needles in there, put them in, has a calming effect on them. So when I travel, I grind up some needles and throw it in there, or some boughs, collect the mutes. There's this calming effect. And then the first bird that I had that we knew it was Aspergillosis, it was in solduck, had it cultured, and growing the culture, and then with solduck, put him in a box, had a coffee grinder, ground up needles, and throw it in there. And then Dr. Dave Parent was the vet, and we could see from x-rays and from tracheal swabs that the Aspergillosis, it was gone. And then subsequent from there, people will give me a call. And if we catch it early in the development of Aspergillosis, it looks like it does kill it. And then on Ben Woodrich's podcast, somebody mentioned to him about it. And then Jean Diaz at the University of Pittsburgh, she's doing her PhD on that right now. Got a lab growing Aspergillosis. And also this is 20 years ago, I was looking for a university to do the studies, and nobody would do it. And I found a private lab here in the Seattle area, and Dr. George Moeller. And so it makes for here we go. It makes for a good story. So the University of Washington rejected me, University of Tennessee, and they didn't think the idea would work. And I went to George, Dr. Moeller, and we're having lunch, and I laid the idea out to him the natural history of it. Looks like there's some instinct. Looks like it's killing fungus. And that I'd like to test it in the lab, grow the fungus in the lab in petri dishes, and then expose it to different types of concentration of these terpenes, and see if in fact that it does kill it. And then how much was the study going to cost? Well, what would be the price for doing it? And we're in a Denny's restaurant, and my window cleaning truck is right outside the window. And he says, I can see you're not a wealthy man and that I don't think you can afford it. But the problem is you've got me so intrigued that if you walk out of here right now, it's going to bug me because I've been doing this kind of research for a long time. So what we thought was just going to be a few weeks lasted for 2 years. We grew Aspergillosis in the labs, and then we exposed it to different conifers. We found 11 different kind of conifers, just the gas, not contact with the resins. The resins, the pitches in contact with it does kill it, like turpentine. That's what turpentine is for killing funguses. And so then it was just a matter of putting the birds in a situation where they could breathe it for how long. So it looks like changing the needles out about every 68 hours. So you've got a fresh needles for a good 10 days. Looks like it knocks it out, and now it's being studied. And also, if any of you guys get athlete's foot or toenail fungus, it kills that.
Aaron used that.
Well, I was going to ask Kate, since Casey's going to embarrass me, I guess I'll air his dirty laundry. He has chronic jock itch. Do you think that would do anything for it?
Yeah, I guess except he's going to be wearing Depends, putting those little thick things with the elastic around the waist and the legs, and then he grind up some needles and put it in there
like a salt shaker, just
and have that conversation with. Well, a funny story goes along with it is that actually happened to me. Is that I had we figured that the toenail fungus came from my dad in the Pacific all the way to the invasion of Japan. And they got jungle rot, in their feet, came back, and all his life he was, being medicated for it. And then he passed it on, to us. And then the whole community Yakima, when you go into after PE, it spreads the athlete's foot. So when
you guys have all got it up there, huh?
Yeah. And so what I do is I grind it up, put it in a plastic bag, and take painter's painter's tape and wrap it around, and just that will cure athlete's foot and toenail fungus.
Wow.
Yeah. When my wife was going to a massage therapist, and then when she passed away, Jill Clark is her name. She let me, I go in to just, have you ever had a really good massage? First time in my life. So I'm laying there on the table, and I look down, and she's got her toenails painted, she had sandals on, and I could tell they were thick. So I asked her if she had toenail fungus. No, let me ask you a personal question, sort of thing. And she laughed, and I said, "Louie, would you do an experiment for me?" And so that's what she did. I got her the Port Orford cedar. She grinded up and cured her toenail fungus.
Wow.
Did you ask her how much she weighed after that?
Yeah, right.
Or how old she is?
Yeah. No, her husband.
I got something to add on this, which is on the Asper and then the cure or whatever. But there's some things that you can observe with all the breeding guys. They all put conifers in all the nests of their breeding hawks.
Yeah.
And so take it one step further. A buddy of mine that Steve mentioned that got me into falconry, I go over to his house about 4 years ago, and it was after the Ice Hawker falconry event up in Sheep Mountain, which Steve was the first speaker that we had. It was the first event. And Don says to me, my hawk's going to die. I said, what? He goes, yeah, it'll be dead tomorrow. It's got Aspergillosis. I said, no way. He goes, yeah, oh yeah, go out and look at it. I went out there and looked at that hawk, and it was sitting in its box, panting, leaned over on the edge of dying. And this isn't just one case of this anecdotal home remedy, hippie magic stuff that's ever happened. It's been done many, many, many times. Hundley looked at me and he goes, well, I've heard about it. And he knows Steve. And he said, I'll give it a try. I said, shoot, man, it's going to die anyway, so why not give it a try? So he does. He grinds up the needles. He's talking to Steve. So his bird recovered within like a week later.
Wow.
He flew it that next year for a couple of years. It died of something else later on. But one of his main concerns was he would have a bird that he would just have to feed. And, it turned out to work. Connor had already gone through it many times. Bethany Rondeau had gone through it with her red tail. And it isn't just, isolated to goshawks. It's more prevalent in goshawks, but Steve can tell you why that is. But I'm here to tell you, I've seen the recovery. I've seen it personally. It works, whether it's, anecdotal by scientific means or not. I hope one day, it becomes standard practice. That doesn't mean that there isn't some other things that we can do to further other infections that creep up on those birds at the same time because they are weak. One of them is getting what is it, Steve? That it busts out to the other organs.
Yeah, they need to get
secondary infection.
Secondary infection. Yeah, hit them with it. About 10 days into it, then hit them with an antibiotic. Because once the Asper is cured and they starting to flush out, where the wounds in the air sacs or in the lungs can then get a bacterial infection. So we follow it up with an antibiotic right afterwards, and to slow that down.
So just to clarify the proper procedure, so that somebody could write this down.
Yeah.
When your bird is expressing symptoms of Asper, you're taking it from its chamber and you're putting it directly into the giant hood, a clean giant hood.
Yeah.
And you're grinding up pine needles and you are lining the bottom of the box with pine needles, round up pine needles, and then you're replacing them every 68 hours.
68 about 6 or 7 cups. Put it in there. When it's closed, you might have to tape some off, but it still has enough ventilation to have air. And then as they breathe that, they're in contact with the fungus is in contact with those terpene gases, and it kills the fungus.
Right.
And then the birds have got to expel it then.
Does anyone sell botanical, terpenes, pine needle extract that anyone's tried?
It's cheap. It's easier to get. The needles themselves are the container, for a little bit behind what's going on here, I think, in terms of natural history, is that photosynthesis in those needles, it's right along the surface of the needles. That's where all the green comes from. On the bottom of the needle, there are these little openings called stomata where all the gas goes up through these little canals all the way to the chlorophyll, and then that photosynthesis occurs, and water and oxygen are expelled at night. So, and they're about 15 microns across. Fungal spores about 4 or less. So you can go, those spores, 3 abreast, can go all the way to the nutrient source, is where the photosynthesis, and germinate and just eat the needles. So what occurred to me when I was in college, there are 2 resin rods that are in the needle. So when you dissect it apart and you smell it, that's where the smell is coming from, those 2 resin rods. It's the pitch in the tree, essentially. And so those 2 resin rods are off-gassing that gas, and that's in those tubules. where all of that gas is exchange going on. So any fungal spores that go up there are dying, getting killed, and the needle grows, and then when it leaves its life, it sheds off and a new one grows. So, and the way I determined what the dosage would be is just take those needles and smell them. And the fact that we can smell them, there's a long history of sweat lodges inside. We've had the tradition of bringing Christmas trees in during the winter months when we're closed up, fungal exposure, those smell, those terpenes. I use it to this day for keeping fruits and vegetables really, really fresh. Those, you get blueberries and you'll see the little fungal growths getting started. And so you just take a bag and take some of the ground up stuff, throw it in there, and you can extend the life of your fruits and vegetables just almost infinitely.
So then for about 6 cups of pulverized pine needles in the bottom of the giant hood, like you're talking about, every 6 hours.
Yeah.
And around the clock.
Yeah.
And then you start feeding little tidbits, of getting the weight back on the bird, because they'll lose their appetite, as you know. And you can weigh them, and less stress, the better. You take them out of there, you weigh them, you feed them. You put more needles in there, and you put them back in the box, and try and keep the stress down as much as possible. And things will improve. It might take 2 weeks.
Depends on the severity. The other thing is that, we don't all have the money to go to a vet and have x-rays and have the lab work done. But if they have, in fact, have Asper, have that fungal growth in their air sacs, is that when you expose them to them, you'll see them kind of go through a swallowing motion, and then they'll do a kind of a casting motion. If they've got a casting, that first casting that comes up, take a look at it. If it's kind of slimy and has a tan color to it, that's the dying fungus. When we grow the fungus in the lab and expose it to the terpene gases, the fungus is white. The mycelium are white. When they're exposed to those gases, the cell wall it thickens and it takes on a tan color in the petri dishes. So when it's dying in the birds, because it may have something else, but if that swallowing and a tan color shows up, and if they swallow, check their mutes, because in their mutes, you have a black center and a lot of white, you'll see a tan color in the mutes. So they're swallowing that Asper, goes through their digestive tract, and it comes out a tan color in the mutes.
Interesting.
Casey, I've been to the bathroom after you, and you forgot to flush. I think you might want to check that out, bud.
Yeah, he didn't have Asper.
You're stressed,
Aaron's mad I exposed his foot fungus on the show. He's going to get revenge every chance he gets.
Yeah.
You're stressed, dude. All that stress is kicking Asper up in you.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Just to add another data point to this. But like any other medical treatment, this isn't 100% effective. I had a goshawk that I worked really closely with Steve using this protocol on that succumbed to Asper, and that was confirmed in a post-mortem.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
And usually what happens on those birds, when I'm working with somebody on the phone, if the birds die, and they do, then I want to have an autopsy done on it. And to look for that tan-colored fluid. And the birds that end up dying, we find that if it breaks out of the air sacs, it ends up killing the kidneys or interferes with the liver. One bird, it worked on the thyroid, it busted out, and then it destroyed the thyroid. But if it's, the hypothesis or our observation, if it's caught early enough, then it hasn't. The bird's in, good flesh, and it hasn't broken out into the body cavity. And when it breaks out in the body cavity, that Asper will end up growing. And so I've done a lot of my own necropsy. Some people's birds, they don't have the money. I spent my own money sending it to Dr. Arno van Wetter and other vets and look at the necropsy and kidney damage. There's some damage to other types of tissues as well.
Yeah, my bird that died when we were trying your treatment, Steve, had Asper on all of her internal organs, liver, kidney, stomach, all of it. But not much in terms of biomass. The necropsy reported it was very little biomass, but it was on everything.
Wow. Yeah. And so just like the birds in the wild, why goshawks? Yeah, it came up early. Why did goshawks? With my goshawks, especially Skeeter and Solduck and another bird named Bee, is I fly in this area a lot, and they get to know the countryside around here. So during the molt, or I actually do it even before that, I'll fly them late into the evening. We haven't caught anything, and so close to the house. So I leave them out at night, and they learn to go to roost. And then in the morning, they come to the house to get me, and then we go hunting. So they learn to be in the area loose. And then as time goes on, I leave them out for longer and longer periods of time to the point they're out for the whole molt. And Skeeter, I've had, he was out sometimes 10, 11 months at a time. And they're just, they learn to fly and hunt. One story pops to mind. I had Solduck. I was 20 miles away at a spot we called the white horse spot, just because it was a white horse in the pasture. And it's a group of alders and blackberry bushes. And we're hunting in that area. And I was hunting with Solduck, and he caught a rabbit. And we're sitting there just enjoy, let him go through that plucking phase. And who shows up but Skeeter? Skeeter comes into the woods. And Solduck is a little dark Olympian bird, and Skeeter comes from the Cascades. He's bigger. He has stiff feathers. Skeeter has a higher top end, but Solduck has soft. Geoff has seen him. His soft feathers, but he's highly maneuverable. But he's not very fast on the level. So Skeeter comes in the woods and no cacking, and starts hassling Solduck. So they start chasing each other in the woods. First it was Skeeter, but Solduck had the advantage in the woods to chase Skeeter out of the woods. So they go out into the open space. Now, Skeeter, being that longer, more falcon-like wings, he has the advantage and chases. So back and forth, I get to enjoy this. Finally, Skeeter stays out of the woods. Solduck comes back on the rabbit. I crop him up, and then I walk back to the truck. And as I walked across the open with Solduck eating, Skeeter's trying to hook around me, taking shots at Solduck, and still no screaming. And he'd go way up in these big Doug firs, and I got Solduck hooded and put him in the truck. And then I walked back into the woods with that rabbit, and walked back into the woods, put it on the ground. Skeeter came down, he fed on the rabbit, and we interacted. When he got his crop, he jumped up on a limb, and see you later. And I walked back with the rest of the rabbit to the truck. 2 days later, 20 miles away, he was back at the house here, courting, and which adds. Look out my window. In the springtime, Kathy and I were in here having breakfast and having a cup of coffee, and then Kathy hears a sound, kind of a wailing, kind of a plaintive wailing sound. And I look out the window on the picnic table. The night before, I had this great big barred rock hen that was in the freezer. People around here, if there's anything you guys get from this podcast, this is a good one, because hawk food costs money. And if you know people in your neighborhood or whatever that have got hens and they're raising eggs, they've got chickens, when those old hens die, they make perfect hawk food. So they can't kill them. I dispatch them. If they got too many roosters, I get the extra roosters. So out of my freezer comes this great big barred rock, black and white barred rock hen. And I threw it out on the picnic table the night before to thaw out. And Kathy was hearing this sound. I had my cup of coffee, and I walked to this window right here to my left. And there's Skeeter humping the chicken. he's on the chicken with his legs out, and the head end, there was the head end, and he's just pushing down with his tail, and he looks at me, and he went, because he's a real imprint, and he looks at me, and it was like, he looked at me and he said, "Oh, he got caught with the artificial doll or something," and his legs are kind of stiff, and he kind of hobbles off her, and he's got his head down flat. Now he's courting me like I didn't, I really like you most. And then
that's not what it looks like.
Yeah. And so I walk back and I'm laughing, and Kathy said, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "That sound." And then we hear it again. So Skeeter crawled right back on the chicken. I said, "Go take a look." And she walks around, Carter looked at, "Oh, disgusting, Steve. You're disgusting." And so to break that little weird moment up, I took the chicken and I threw it behind the garbage cans. And about 45 minutes later, we hear the garbage cans moving, and he's back behind the garbage cans doing it. So for any of you out there, I've got a friend, Stephen Wood, and we came up with the idea of going into wild goshawk territories, and it's called Bitch on a Stick. We put an effigy, find a good taxidermist, make an effigy of a female goshawk, and put it in there. Les Boyd made a way to collect semen. So on the effigy, I'll bet you, because they've got field data of like female goshawks in the nest, they're not all that male. Or that really? Male, they can have, multiple, dalliances. So you put a bitch on a stick and collect some wild goshawk semen. We haven't done it yet, but it looks like it's doable.
That's why the Everett family had to stop raising chickens when Casey was a kid.
Here we go.
His mom looked out the window and saw Casey doing the exact same thing.
How long did you have Skeeter hacked out? Did you go over that?
I had him for 19 years, and he molded loose 16 times. Loose like that.
How did you start that with these birds? Like this crazy hacking? Like how would someone even begin to do this?
Okay, I did that in the area. I think I started and then Paisley'd off. Is that I would leave them out at night, close to the house, with hungry, and then in the morning they come down to the house, and then it got to the point where I would just turn them loose. And I fly my birds loose in the trees around here, then flush ducks and rabbits with my dogs. And so I turn them loose, and they have a transmitter on them, but I wouldn't go out and hunt. And then the next day would come around, and then they would come looking for me. And then gradually I could just leave them out for longer and longer. And Skeeter built nests. He had 2 courtship centers. He'd bring in female goshawks, but they didn't stay. And I have 2 friends of mine that have duplicated. One being Tom Cox with Fast Eddie at Tiercel. He had loose for many years. And now Rod Ingalls has Grendel. Grendel's 12. And of those 12 years, 7 of those years, he's loose all the time.
You just went over and saw Grendel, didn't you?
Yep, I was just over. Matter of fact, I've got some. I'll send the videos, to Aaron and Casey of my time over with Rod.
I think some details may have potentially gotten missed for people that aren't familiar with this, with what we're talking about here. But you're talking about essentially hacking out goshawks during the molting period.
Yeah, but it and with Skeeter and then Solduck, with Skeeter it was 12 months of the year, 10 months of the year. I'd bring him down for normal falconry. And with Grendel, Rod Ingalls, it's, all year round. He doesn't bring him down, but he can call him. You'll see in the little video I'll send to him. He could go over and pick him up in court. And as a matter of fact, he can pick him up and put him in his mews and have him in their building nest. And yeah.
Do you want to elaborate on doing this when you were living in Yakima with prairies and red tails?
Yes. Yeah, I had as I mentioned, my mom was awesome. And so I had my prairies, and they'd be tied up during the molt, and then I hunted all over the Yakima Valley. And she said, "Just why don't you hack them when they were they were young. Why don't you, as adults, why don't you just turn them loose? They're not going to go anywhere. And so, yeah, it was her idea. So the first parade did that with, turned her loose, and my mom and dad's house overlooking the Yakima Valley, and they had a rock facing on their house with a ledge that was about this wide, and there my mom and dad's sliding glass doors out onto their deck, and that prairie would go to roost at night right there by their door, and that went on for years, and eventually we had a box with sand in it. We'd put eggs, and she'd lay eggs in it and incubate them. But what was cool about her is eventually she went to the Yakima Canyon and raised babies there in the Rosa Dam. And she would go back, show up during the wintertime at my mom and dad's, and summertime she spent it at the Rosa Dam, Irie.
How far away from your house in Yakima was that?
That's about 25, 30 miles. Yeah, it was halfway between Ellensburg. It was in the Yakima Canyon area. That has lots of prairies in it. And she had the little tiny short jesses, so we could identify her.
The first falconry book I ever read was A Rage for Falcons by Stephen Bodio. And he talked about someone that called down a red tail at the start of every season.
Yeah. There's I did a Passage Prairie Falcon twice. It's kind of skirting the law that second time, but I called it a lost bird, even though she was in adult plumage. And then there was, oh my gosh, I'll forget his name. Al Ross did that with Merlins.
That's right. I heard that.
I've heard that also. Yeah.
Yeah.
A few Merlin guys do that where they put them out and then reclaim them.
Yeah. Richmond. Yeah. Yeah.
If I live somewhere remote enough, I would love to try that.
Yeah.
I haven't shown my bird to get into trouble here. Steve, on the subject of goshawks and asper, I live in North Carolina, the Southeast. You for a period of time flew goshawks in Georgia.
Yeah.
And there's this idea here that goshawks don't do well in this climate.
Yeah.
And there's also this idea that goshawks are not a suitable bird for squirrels, for gray squirrels.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've done both. And my very good friend, Steve Hine, you should have on your podcast. He's really good educator and good falconer. And so I helped him train their mascot down there, the bald eagle. So when I would travel down there, I'd take my goshawks and fly squirrels. And a good friend, Aaron Allred, he in Minnesota or Wisconsin. He lived in Squirrelwood, Wisconsin. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. And the female goshawk that he grew up in those squirrel woods and chasing squirrels, and she got to the point she was really good at catching them. And I had a chance to fly her, and I took her to Georgia, and she was really good at catching squirrels. And Aaron told me what the elder was is that when she catches a squirrel, don't go in and help. Just stay back. She has her own particular way of doing it. And she would catch them by the head, just as Aaron, we would hold on one foot on the body, the other foot around the head, and she would take one of those rear talons, ilex talons, run it right underneath the throat and choke them out. And so the instructions would stand back, her wings would be out, mouth would be wide open, because those squirrel flights, they were like 200 or 300-year-old live oaks. And where the oaks where Officer and a Gentleman were filmed. They're massive things. And the squirrel flights, it's some of the best falconry, exciting. It's like crack cocaine, like I imagine it would be. And North American goshawk, you look at their feet, they've evolved to kill tree squirrels. And they're very quick. They can climb vertically up and spiral around the trees. And when they catch them, if they don't hold on to them right, they'll let them go. These are bird goshawks. We on Eric's suggestion, we never flew them lean. as you know, I play exercise games, so they were in phenomenally good shape, and they would watch the squirrels and go after them, and then catch them, release them, catch them until they get them the right way. And the imprint female bee, she came up with a different technique. She would grab them, release them, grab them, and then she'd find that real thin skin right behind the arm, and she'd run her talon in that way, and then they would drown to, blood and subdue them that way. And she was never bitten. And but one being in really good shape, so they weren't desperate. As a matter of fact, with bee, if I have to talk to Chris Kennedy to remember the details, we think that she caught and released over 50 squirrels before she killed the first one.
Like in the first season of the bird?
Yeah. Just
for sure.
Yeah. She would look at them, chase them, just play with them. And then a lot of times she would just sit on the glove and just watch them. Just watch them. And before she would go after them, sometimes she just lackadaisically, like a marsh hawk, go through the trees. Then all of a sudden turn it on. And then the chases would go on and on. We'd call her down, and we didn't catch anything. But the day she caught her first one, then we were off into the races.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a taboo subject that comes up a lot when you talk about it. Flying squirrels with goshawks, and it's.
But
I don't really know why it's so taboo. Just because they don't have big feet like a red tail, it's a completely different hunting style.
It's dangerous because they can't get injured, but the birds in the wild, that's what they feed on. And whether in the northern areas, pine squirrels, whatever it is, and it's a matter of having them good enough shape and having them heavy, being flown heavy, so they're not desperation. The birds that have to grab them and kill them, otherwise they think they're going to starve to death. Those I'm hypothesizing, Chris and I and some others, is that and Aaron did it very successfully, and we got a bird that did it, and then Bee got to be really good at it in her brown year. Yeah.
No, the goshawks they're just, it's not even debatable that they hunt squirrels. Like that's not
you look at their toe length, especially the North American birds compared to the Europeans, the toes are shorter, more red tail like, and, especially the females. And, and it's so darn fun. Whoa.
Oh, it's the best.
Especially if you've got good dogs that know what's going on. I had my Jack Russells, and they knew that the squirrels were coming down out of the tree, so they were at the bottom of the tree to move them back up. And it was it was way fun.
Oh,
yeah.
And
I never heard that it was taboo. I would do it in a second if I had a lot of squirrels. In fact,
the taboo part is there's so many injuries. And I think my thought is the birds are being flown at desperation weights.
Yeah, everybody wants to kill right away, and that's not the case. They may go through 29, 50 cases before they kill. And, killing is one thing, but, having those birds develop the skills and the attitude and getting, like you talk about, Steve, the skill to go get that quarry and subdue it without getting hurt.
Back when Lindsay Benger got her first goshawk Kai, and that the pressure is on to go kill something, and the young hawks go through a learning period where hunting is not just catching and killing. Hunting is watching the quarry and seeing how it acts when a goshawk is not chasing them.
Right.
And then when they chase them, then how does it act? And then when they chase it half-assed, how does it act? Then when they chase it really serious, its behavior changes again because those rabbits are watching. And then how do they act when they get right on their ass and chase them? And then when they grab them and let them go, they're collecting data. So a lot of falconers, when they go out and a rabbit gets up and that doesn't chase it, then they want to cut the weight. It's in an education phase.
Yeah,
just watching. And then another thing that goes on, if they're red tails in the distance flying, and the bird chases it. It knows it's over there. If it catches something and kills it, it knows that red tail saw it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they catch and release, and it squeals, and they just let it go and sit up, and they look at what shows up. The coyotes show up, a bobcat shows up. That way they know what kind of other predators are in their area. And many times they wait for those other predators to get fed before they catch something. Or they catch something, kill them. They've got to feed one or two coyotes before they get a chance to eat themselves.
Right. Like golden eagles out west. We talked about that.
Oh, yes.
The Tirsul will get harassed by his female siblings, and he'll have to feed them before he can feed himself.
Yes.
You know,
yep.
Same concept. It makes perfect sense.
Kind of like going on a date with somebody that's real hot.
Oh, yeah.
You buy flowers and you buy the meals.
Yeah.
I always like to reassure people that those young birds are learning, you know.
Yes.
My red tail's an old girl, and she knows what she can catch. And she knows that when the dogs are running a rabbit and they're preoccupied with the dogs, that rabbit is, and that hawk enters the game and she misses, and that rabbit now runs different, and she knows it. And she adjusts to that, you know, and when those rabbits have figured out this dog's on my ass, and, you know, here comes a red-tailed hawk, you know, by surprise, or a goshawk, you know, it's a game changer. But those, you got to let those birds learn, and you can't be ripping the weight back to make them hunt in desperation is what Steve's saying there. That's real important. They have the energy, the strength, the health, and, you know, exercising these birds, which is another topic that Steve has brought up. We all talk about is the exercising of them, even when they're not hunting. You know, it's not like deer hunting. I kept telling this young apprentice, you know, you don't take it out and expect it to kill something right away. It's a process, and it's not like taking your gun, your 30-06 out of the closet, loading it up, going killing a deer. It's not that easy. And he found out this year. He goes, holy mackerel. He says, I had no idea. I said, yeah, but it's time spent in the field, you know, and it's patience, and it's keeping the birds healthy and exercise and all muscled up. And then, you know, things will happen. Good things will happen. You know, the bird will feed itself and feed you, and so on. And Steve has really, really been adamant about flying these birds, you know, at a good weight and healthy. Every time we talk, you know, who was it? What did Steve Coffer come up? You remember that? He came to a meeting that you did in Wisconsin, and he had a 63% kill ratio. The guy's all numbers. He knew 63% kill ratio
on pheasants
and rabbits and ducks. Yeah. And he goes to Layman's, what was it, 20 some years ago?
Yeah. Almost 30. Yeah.
Yeah. And he thought, what do you mean exercising the birds? And he took upon Steve's, regimen of exercising the birds. And I sat there in Steve's kitchen with Coffer, and Coffer said, I was feeling bad for the bird. He says, I was killing stuff. And he said, then I would trade it off. I was doing multiple kills on ducks and rabbits and pheasants each day. And he said, I would trade it off with a tidbit, come home and exercise that bird for the crop. He says, but the end result was I went up, 94%, 250 head in 49 days.
Yeah. And the only difference was that bird was in shape.
So, Steve, what is the exercise regimen?
This again makes for a good story. When I was taking the psychology class and to do a project, and I didn't want to do bar pressing rats and stuff, and wanted to apply the concepts, I was vertically jumping my birds to the fist. And so with Dr. Reed, I used operant conditioning concept of variable racial intervals. And and started jumping my birds. The female prairie, she'd had an injured wing, a broken wing, and the other birds that was flying, and she was kind of sidelined. And everybody at the time, friends of mine, if you're jumping the birds to the fist like the Arabs do, the Indians, that they'll get fist bound, or they won't wait on because you've got all this ground hand association. So I experimented on her, so I didn't ruin my good birds. And I got the jumping, and then trying to figure out how many I got. So I got upwards to, like, in one session, 250 jumps. And then you take 200 times at 8 to 9 feet up, down, you add that up. Tom Cox, on one Jer Peregrine they had, now I could get these numbers wrong, but the idea, he would jump during the week and then go fly sharptails and sage grouse on the weekend. And that season, that Jer Peregrine did 97,000 vertical feet at a stall. So he would just do it, jump. So that bird would go down on the pad and then turn around and jump up. And he recorded it all and then multiplied out 97,000 feet at a stall. No wonder that bird's. So I thought I would have, if I'm going to jump my bird 200 times the fist, how many vertical feet? Well, that female prairie, from going from just setting on the side, and it was about 2 months of that, and then I took her out to a spot up in the this little bowl, and there was a canal there. And we've flown the other birds and didn't know there were some ducks in it. And I turned her loose. And shoot, she took a 200-foot pitch, with her gimpy wing. And the friend of mine was with, we were just kind of looking, said, what's this? And so we were walking by, and she was still mounting up, and we accidentally flushed some ducks off that canal. And she comes out of the stoop, and she binds to this hen mallard. And then we're off to the races. I had no training other than just getting her a shape, and all the other instincts came into line. And that's what we find with the red tails being flown. Red tails love to fly, and when they're in shape, they slope soar, go up to the high tops of the trees. And my granddaughter's red tail was, just phenomenal the last 2 years.
Yeah,
and I've got little video clips of her standing on a 10-foot ladder, and she got him on the fist and drops him down, winnows down, turns around and jumps up to her fist. When she got strong enough, they put links of chains on her leash. So when she goes up now, she got to carry the weight up. And I think they got up to 3 or 4 links of chain added to the leash.
And that exercise.
The bird was in a late season passage bird, already knows how to hunt, already knows how to fly. And it's as good a shape, if not better shape, than the birds in the wild. On that subject, my hawking buddy, Joel Gerlach, his old bird, Joel is a really good athlete and plays soccer and all kinds of stuff. And so when he got his first red tail, we talked about doing the jumping to the fist, and he's building contractor. And he got Clover in really good shape. And Lydia Ash was along when this whole thing got started, is that she was flying and a wild haggard came in and started pushing Clover around, and Clover strong enough that couldn't be chased off. They grabbed talons and winnowed down, landed in the middle of a road, had to stop traffic. They picked him up and separated him, and Joel picked Clover up and proceeded to feed her. They checked the haggard out, it was okay, and turned it loose. Clover was entered on haggard red tails, and he caught, if I remember it right, the numbers are approximate here, but caught 15 haggards. So you know how the haggards will come in, do territorial stuff? She'd chase them off. If they didn't want to be chased off, then she'd haul them out of the sky, and then we'd trade them off, check them out, turn them loose. Yeah, I think it was 15 haggards and 2 passage birds.
Wow.
Yeah.
Steve, you mentioned Jack Russells earlier, and that's something we wanted to touch on with you about falconry and dogs.
Falconry and dogs. Yeah, I think the biggest mistake, Radford and I've had this conversation a lot. The biggest mistake is not getting a dog. For a matter of fact, I think it was, refresh my memory, I told you to get a dog first, didn't I?
Oh, you said, well, how did that work? I called you up and you were busy, and we talked for a few minutes, and he goes, okay, I'll sponsor you if you get a dog.
Yep.
That's sound advice.
Steve, I've been looking for a dog for 2 years. I can't find any beagles west of the Mississippi. And he goes, I know where there's a dog. And that's when he told Justin Rondeau had a litter of Yog beagles. And that's how I got started with those. It was a dog, and the beagle in them, was, a guaranteed rabbit hunter. And the Yog had the prey drive and the smarts. And that combination took the Yog down a couple notches where they were manageable and didn't want to kill everything within the whole county. And, the beagle gave him the nose to ground it was just a tremendous combination, and away I went. And I got the dog first. I had the dog literally almost a year before I got the bird.
Yeah, Geoff had a Yog beagle in his arms a little earlier.
Yeah, just a minute ago.
That was pure Yog.
That was pure Yog.
Yeah, that was one of the puppies that Seth produced.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah, but dogs, the reason I started going to the terriers, it started off with the Jack Russells, and that comes out of Louisiana. Those guys down there were running terriers, and through Danny Pike, I heard about it, and so I got some Jack Russells, and basically they don't have a nose as good as the hounds, but they want to catch stuff, go into brush, and they were easy to call back. And at one time I had a pack of 8. And
8.
But sometimes if it was really tough hawking, I could run them in shifts, and then they get all cut up from the berries, and you have to have days to recuperate. And so I always have, fresh dogs. That was when I was really campaigning hard.
Yeah,
I've been in the field with Steve when he had 15 dogs out.
Yeah. Gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
5 of his, two he borrowed from Seth, and then the rest he borrowed from neighbors.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
He used to live under the adage, there's never enough dogs.
Never enough dogs.
Yeah.
And the other thing is never enough dogs, because somebody always gets injured, hit by a car, like they get old. So you have to have the next generation coming on. And so now these Yog Beagle crosses are really, really awesome dogs. Radford's got his are really good.
I had a female that I bred. She's got 14 pups out there. And Ian Gregg back east in New Jersey.
Yes.
You guys know Ian?
Yeah, I've seen that dog hunt. Yeah.
And poor dog got killed last year. Anyway, he called me up and he goes, "You have changed my falconry forever."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he'd been a falconer for some 10, 12, 14 years. And he said, this is it. He says, it's over. He says, I'm dogs forever.
That's pretty much everybody that runs a dog after not running a dog says the exact same thing.
What was that one that said, what was it Nick Fox said in his book, Birds of Prey? He said, I've never seen a falconer that got a dog that said, I don't want a dog.
Yeah.
or gave it up. Or gave it back.
Yeah, maybe not this dog. Because of Teddy Moritz and you guys back there, the miniature dachshund craze, I'm looking at Pooperdink over here. He's half miniature dachshund, a quarter Yog Terrier, and a quarter Beagle.
That's probably a cool mix.
Yeah, it is. He's, we don't have to have holes like you did back there. We just have to negotiate the blackberries.
Yeah,
and
I bet he's ugly as sin.
He's sweet. He's got little short legs and long. He's got one leg that kind of funny. But man,
you sure I didn't breed that dog? He sounds like one of my dogs.
He tends to go to the left a lot because of his left leg shorter than the right leg.
And he loves to sleep with me. As a matter of fact, I've got my blankets down, my wool blankets. And here's another tip, reason for podcast. I figured out how to clean wool. like wool, you got to send to the dry cleaners and all that kind of stuff. Wool's expensive, so we go to polypropylene. Well, I got to thinking about the electron microscope of wool and some of the properties of wool, and I come up with a way. I've been doing it now for about 2 months, 3 months, like this, expensive Filson coat. So what you do, you go to your dryer and you take a towel and you soak it in water, throw it in your dryer, take whatever's wool, throw it in the dryer, turn it up on high heat, and it steam cleans it. Well, first take the lint filter, clean it out so there's nothing there, and it doesn't shrink it. It's tumbling in all that steam, and because of the way wool is the characteristic of wool fiber, all of the dirt just moves off and it ends up in the filter.
Wow.
And so I've got an expensive wool blanket that it would, take a lot of money to send to a dry cleaners, and it will come out clean. So, yeah.
That's smart, but you can't dry it too long, though. You got to It's got to be the exact time, otherwise then it shrinks.
Nope. High heat on maximum length of time, and that tumbling, no shrinkage. This is no kidding. I probably have $8,000 worth of Filson wool, everything from sweaters to coats to pants, to all kinds of stuff.
Wow. So you're a Filson man.
I'm a Filson man.
If you see Steve in the winter, he's got all $8,000 worth.
Yeah.
I think $8,000 worth of Filson can fit in one drawer, I think.
Yeah, that's right. It's expensive. But I've got some of my grandfather's Filsons. And
that's cool. I love Filson. I've got some stuff too.
Yeah. Well, that one picture that I sent to you, that was for a Filson ad. I had the Filson hat on, it had shirt, coat, and everything.
So that was a real ad for Filson?
Yeah, I was on I don't know if it was that. No, that picture was taken, but there's another one of me. Well, Mike, that one you turned into artwork.
That was the Filson one.
That was the Filson one.
Yeah.
So AI is considered artwork, but
yeah. Well, no, it was a real photograph. There was a real
better
photograph.
Than I can do.
Yeah. You can. And Mike took that photograph and let AI mess with it, which turned out great.
So you were in a Filson ad at some point?
Several times.
How did that work? You got like an agent or something?
What?
You have an agent or something? How did that come about?
I shop
Operant conditioning. You made them call you.
It just kind of happened by accident. Now 4 generations of people, buying Filson. So I'd go into the store, knew the salespeople there, knew the managers, and I said, "You want to see something cool?" And I had my truck parked out there, and I got my Goshawk and walked in, and these guys I know, and they looked at that and they said, "That's cool." And heck, do you go hunting in Filson with that hawk? And I said, "Duh." Yeah, I call the wax cotton my exoskeleton. You can go through brush and you can sew it if you rip it up. And so because of that, then they did a photo shoot with me and dressed out in my regular, Filson hunting clothes.
Oh, that's
neat. So they put me on the cover. And
is that available somewhere? Could we find that? That'd be cool to have.
Yeah, it's on the net, isn't it?
I don't know.
Where'd you get it?
I got it from you. It was a picture you sent me, and then I just copied it and sent it and put it on.
Okay.
Put it on chat.
Mike did his AI magic on it.
Yeah.
I have a friend that found it on the internet.
Yeah, you sent it to me, and then I made it. I made a Chat GPT artwork out of it. But
that was so cool.
Yeah,
when
that's got a picture of me holding soul duck on a wet day, an actual day we went hunting.
Yeah.
So I've seen that picture on the Marshall website.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's because it had Marshall transmitter on the backpack. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we'll add that to your.
They got legal clearance from Filson to use that picture.
We'll add that to your resume. You're also a model
right now. Looking for it.
What's that?
We're going to add that to your resume. You're also a model.
Yes, I'm a model. I'm a male model.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. When we've got everybody here, is there anything else you guys feel like we should take the time to discuss while we're all here?
Well, I was thinking one of the things that we haven't touched on is trapping of birds these days, the way Steve taught me, and trapping and manning them via the strobe and concealed trap.
Yeah.
It's catching on up here. People have actually noticed the difference in the birds. Long time falconers have noticed. It's like, holy mackerel, that bird's dead tame. And you know, it's the way that we trap them. And when I didn't know different, understand, I didn't know any different. So he says, just conceal yourself. I knew Huntley told me that he takes a blanket and he goes up to the bird and throws the blanket on there. Well, Steve didn't tell me that, but he says, just get a something to conceal your form, you know. So I was like, I got a pillowcase, you know, and put it over my head, cut a couple eyes out, went out into the field one day.
Mike, was it white?
Yeah, as a matter of fact.
Jeez, Mike.
And I'm out there in eastern Washington, you know, I got this haggard red tail on the ground that hit my trap. And I'm out in the middle of this field and there's cars going by and people are stopping, you know. This
guy's about to commit a hate crime on the side of the
road. Oh, no, in parts of eastern Washington, that's just par for the course.
At least the hat wasn't pointed.
Okay, it wasn't pointed.
Good. All right, good.
But I got to thinking about that and I was like, you know, I might have to change this up a little bit. And
I think so.
Connor introduced me to a ghillie suit and a head mask, and I had the we'll call it quick stop shopping mart, you know, with the robber mask, you know, with the eyes cut out and what do you call it, a stocking cap, you know, with the eyes cut out of it. I did it that way, and I've done all kinds of stuff. Tim Sell. Down the street from me had a goshawk in his nest, in his trap, and he says he's going in to get the mic concealed. He couldn't find anything to put over himself, and he's climbing into a garbage sack. And he's tripping on the way out the door because he can't see anything.
Where the idea came from was this. Let's say you've got a goshawk perfectly trained, you can run into it, trade it off game. Say, then do this. Run into it while it's on game, grab it by its legs, wings out, get whoever's with you to take pictures of you with your goshawk and jam a hood on it. Could you fly it the next day?
Exactly.
Yeah. So it dawned me, if I wouldn't do that to one of my trained birds, why would I do it to him on the first day? So from that point, I must have been 17 or 18. And that's, so camouflage, you trap them, pick them up, hood them. The idea of the strobe light came later. It came in college in my senior year.
Explain the idea, how the strobe light works, Steve, the mechanics of it. That's what's important.
Yeah, and so this is the way it happened. There was a tavern called the Ranch Tavern, huge dance floor, and live bands. You know, it was a college crowd on one night, cowboy crowd on another night. So the place is pretty rough, and they had a strobe light. You know, when the band's playing like, how many of you ever been to a disco and have a strobe light going? Okay, so I begin to notice that when the strobe light's going and I'm dancing, you know, with a nice looking lady, I could get closer to him when the strobe was on than when it was red or light. And then if the strobe wasn't on and I'd walk over to ask to dance, I'd get more turned down. But if I wait for the strobe to be on and I'd strobe my way over there and dance with him, and in the strobe light could dance with them and then get closer and I could touch, right? And so when the strobe light was shut off, I just leave. Okay. And so I thought, what's going on here? And so I wonder if it's the nature of a strobe light, what's going on, and light. Now here we go in, Layman going down the weeds, down the rabbit hole to something ridiculous, but light is either a wave or a particle. Light can be a wave, or if they measure physics, it can be a particle. And then also, if you have two eyes and the way our brains work, that it can take information in either as a particle or as a wave. And remember on Star Trek, Spock was pure logic and humans were all emotion. And so I got a strobe light, and I thought about when I was in full light, I emotionally felt different than in a strobe light. And one of the girls that I dated and asked her, because I did an experiment. I only dated her, and when I was in the strobe light, and I got further along, and so I thought, I wonder if this will work. If this will work on the birds. So I go out, concealed trap, has no information, put a hood on it, establish the secondary reinforcer in the hood, get them eating on the fist, so it's got touch and all that happening. Set up the strobe light right off my right shoulder, still have my face covered, and then they take the hood off, and in the strobe, get them to eat in the strobe. All right, and then so I could hold them up, and I'd have a wide brim hat. I'd take the ski masks off, and I could expose myself down at where the food is. So it's just as if I'm emerging out of the food. And that first my eyes, and then I've got a rheostat set up with an ambient light. So there's bright strobes, black strobe, black, and then I can bring the ambient light up and gradually fill up the dark space. And I know as the light would come up, then they would become emotional. They're like fear. If they're looking at me, run the light down, they're in the strobe, no fear. And just like hand, they can't perceive movement. And so I've got the ambient light on a rheostat, and I can function that with my feet. So the light's down really low, or it comes up really bright. So I can control the light in between. So over the course of about 6 days or so, from the time I trap it to the time they're eating in full light, not one fearful encounter. And those birds, when I do that, then go to vertical jumping, then to go outside, I can fly them at really high weights and no fear. As a matter of fact, the last time, when I started really experimenting on with a passive female goshawk, is that the last time they saw two eyes handing food, that was their mother. And so when I do that with them, and then they'll reach over and take food, and I can see that behavior change, and I shape the behavior in that direction. So they come out at tame, almost an imprint. And it's the spookiest thing to do, but it can trap them, go right into flying them. Well, with Mike, with his red tail, with literally no fear, can avoid the whole thing.
Three tiercel goshawks like that, and they come out just like they don't even, they don't bait. They look at me totally different.
Yeah.
Like one guy I know, he went and trapped his own red tail, and for his girlfriend, a few days later, a couple weeks later, he sees another one out there, and he had concealed trapped it and was manning his red tail via this method. And he saw another dark morph out there for his girlfriend, and he went out, set the trap, and then ran up and grabbed it. He didn't have a concealed trap outfit on or anything. It was left at the house. And he brings it back, gives it to her, and she is semi-strobing it. And the end result, what I'm getting at, is every time that guy went into the room, the bird flared up. Every time it saw him, wings went out. That was the fear that it associated with being trapped. And on her, it never did that because she was strobing it and concealed, accepted the bird. It didn't have that trauma, which is tremendous if you think about it. Here are some big two-eyed monsters coming up to you, grabbing you, holding you up like an ice cream cone, taking pictures. All the while you're leaning back, the bird's eyes are dilated, the mouth is open, its wings are flared, and you're out there taking pictures of this poor animal, and you stuff a hood on it and throw it and put a sock on it, and that's the bird's first introduction to you. Now, what do you got to do to get it to like you or to accept you is you got to start ripping the weight back. And on any of these birds that I've ever done this with, weight was not an issue. Weight did come down, but the thing was they were eating immediately from me because, like Steve says, they were hunting when they hit the trap. They were hungry. So they're hungry if you present them with the food. And the last one I did was a Harlan's red tail up here. The guy says, I can't get this bird to eat. And I went up there and I helped him trap it. We went right into the strobe room. After he trapped it, he called me that he trapped it, concealed trapped it. I flew up. It was only a 10-minute flight. And the bird was laying on his seat. It had never seen him, never seen me. We took it into the strobe room and it ate food. That quick in the strobe. Yeah. It was just like, I was like, holy mackerel, this is great. And that bird is dead tame. That bird it thinks he's his mommy now. He did a great job with it. It has never seen any fearful, cues.
Interactions.
Interactions.
Yeah.
That's great.
And this trauma learning is in psychology. Some people, when they have a traumatic event, it can ruin their whole life. Other people will get over it. Trauma learning is very, hard to deal with. So for centuries, our birds have been trapped, turned into ice cream cones and hooded, and they train just fine. But there's that certain percent where trauma learning, where they have to be ripped back a long ways. So far, when we've trapped the birds this way, take it slow, make that transition into the light with a strobe in their wrist and get them exercise. One of the first things, another thing of my notes to talk about is mitochondria. And that in our muscle cells, us and the birds, the mitochondria that converts the food into energy, and the mitochondria. There's some really interesting study of migrating birds that they look at them during the breeding season, take some samples, and the mitochondria are, let's say, 10, and for whatever that little piece of muscle. Then when it comes time to migrate, the mitochondria in the cell will go up to 100, like 10 times the amount of mitochondria, and they burn the energy. The birds migrate, hundreds and hundreds of miles a night. They get on their wintering territory. The mitochondria drop off really quickly. They fatten up. Then the mitochondria pack in there again, and then they migrate again. So when we're getting our birds and trapping them, they'll burn through the food, but the mitochondria drop off, and especially when we get them really skinny. And then the birds bring the weight back up, but we've damaged the mitochondria for having them too low too long. And so the birds that we exercise on a regular exercise routine, they don't increase in weight more, but they increase the number of mitochondria, and the energy that they go through. It might be 4 or 5 times more food you have to feed a bird that's in really, really good shape, because the mitochondria go up and down really quick.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, just research. I'll find some of these mitochondria articles and I'll send them to each of you. I'm kind of going down a mitochondria hole lately.
Well, the more you have to feed a bird, the more you can do with it.
Yes, that's right.
It makes total sense.
Yeah.
Steve, on the subject of the strobe light, I had a goshawk that I raised with my own direct food association recipe that I use, and left it in the care of a very good friend of mine who's really competent with goshawks, but I didn't leave direct instructions on how I was raising it. When I got back from vacation, I had an aggressive eyeball eating monster. And I had talked to you about using the strobe method as part of the training protocol that I used to pull her out of that. And I'm curious if you kept up with using the strobe method to deal with aggression.
I did it with a couple birds. It just gives an opportunity. It slows them down and allows me to hand tidbits and establish that protocol. Their impressions of me and aggression toward me is set. It changes the motion. It allows me to hand food to them, to shape behavior without getting caught. On passage birds, when they have no information, zero, and they come into the strobe, they behave differently than a captive bird, the one that already has an evaluation of me, even though it's in the strobe. It's just that they can't perceive the movement.
Yeah, the one example that I had of a really aggressive bird where I was using the strobe, I found that it gave me the ability, like you said, I could hand her food, and she didn't really have a perception that the food was about to come, so she couldn't react aggressively on it. And it gave me a window to shape gentle behaviors, reward gentle behaviors, because I could hand her the food without her flipping aggressive on me.
Yeah, the strobe that we find is called Big Shot. That's the best one, in that you can regulate the frequency of the strobe. You can regulate the strobe length when it flashes. Is it short or is it long? And
so you're not using a strobe headlamp. You're using an actual.
The discotheque strobes are the
it's called the
lamp
Big Shot. It's called the Big Shot 2. It's on Amazon. It's $49.
Yeah.
And you guys down in the lower 48, you hit send button, it'll be at your doorstep 5 minutes later.
At the door right now.
Yeah, I know. Up here, we got to wait almost 3-4 days to get it. But
poor baby.
Yeah, no, it's tough. Tough.
I just had something, a Cooper's hawk fly by just a little bit ago, and about training passage birds. There was a wild Cooper's hawk raiding my pigeons, and so I would, it was a passage female, so I would go out and toss pigeons for her, and it got to the point where I could hold one in my hand and she'd come in and take it, and then I've got these little chickens running around, and I wasn't home for a day or two, and she killed one of my little black hens, and it was right out in my parking lot, and it was big enough that the Cooper's hawk couldn't drag it off, and it was in the evening, and then I didn't want to just leave the chicken out there, so I picked it up, put it in the refrigerator, and I walked out in the orchard about noon or so, and that Cooper's hawk was around, so I just threw the chicken out on the ground again, and the Cooper's hawk came down, fed it, and so I thought, I wonder how long I can keep this going, and so I would put the chicken out, frozen. I'd put it in the refrigerator, and it would be frozen, and put it out, and the Coopers would come down, pluck, and eat. And it got to be a regular thing. I could just walk around, cars could drive in, she'd be on her black chicken. And so it never rotted. It was always there for her to come back. And I got to thinking, what could I do to maybe train this bird without ever having to capture it? So I made a mannequin of myself, took my clothes, stuffed it, and put the chicken down and put my mannequin, propped up against a tree. And so within a few days, I had the chicken between my mannequin's legs with mannequins, sloped over, just looking at her, and she'd fly in and do it. So I thought, okay, now me. So I put my clothes on, sat down with the chicken between my legs, and just sat there. Sure enough, she came in. She thought something was off, but she came in and ate. So I've got this wild Cooper's hawk right here looking at her. And then she ate her fill and off she went. Then I wonder how I could, take this. And because of the strobe and, me emerging, out of the quarry. So I put my hands underneath the chicken and I started handing her tidbits while she ate. And gradually I could literally on the chicken hold her, got to the point, I had it didn't even, I just a regular work glove on and holding her and touching her and handing tidbits. And so the next thing was to going hunting and she disappeared. So that was cool. The end of the story.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I had two other things that I made a note of to go back and revisit. Steve, when we were talking about your protocol with using pine needles to treat Asper,
yeah.
One thing when Casey was asking for the details that had occurred to me didn't get covered was which species of needles of pine needles are effective and are useful. Question number one, and the other question for you to answer is: are some better than others?
Yeah. Okay, with Dr. Muller and I, we tested 11 different species. It looks like they all have the same problem, is fungus, and they all work. Some just a little bit better than others. And what's interesting is that Porterford cedar, it's a conifer from down in Northern California and Oregon, and they're used as a ornamental. I've got my neighbor down below has one, and there's a restaurant that I go to. They have one, but they all work, from juniper, white pine, red pine, and in the natural history data, it's interesting that the birds use, if there's a red pine, white pine, they use the one that's most effective. When we tested them, and so they all work. Some just better than others, and the way to test it was, with a rotting orange, and to extend the life of fruits and vegetables that way, and then toenail fungus and that sort of thing.
Steve, I got another thing along what Geoff's talking about there. Can you describe your observations of goshawks going to roost at night in a conifer forest?
Yeah. That I was going to get to that earlier. Goshawks, when they go to roost at night, they're in conifer forest, and this is why I think they're most susceptible to Asper, is that they're self-medicating at night. And with skeeter and solduck, when they would go to roost, they went to roost in of the different species here. They went to roost in the one that was most effective for Asper. So it looks like the wild birds are self-medicating, and the goshawks that are in migration, they're migrating across some landscapes that don't have to go to roost in conifers at night. They're stressed. Falconers get them. So I would recommend anybody that gets a passage accipiter, goshawks in particular, that you trap them, hood them, and right from the start expose them to those needles and the terpene gas. If for no other reason, it has a calming effect on them.
And what do you think about traveling with your goshawk?
Yeah.
In the giant hood.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
You grind up the needles and put them in there, and the hawk shut on, and it breathes.
We just threw the needles loose in there, and then if we're worried about being on the road too long, then we'll take a little coffee grinder, little cups coffee grinder, grind them up and throw that in the bottom. It's that smell. If it smells good, it's killing Asper.
Mm.
We're all goshawk guys and focusing on goshawks and Asper, but when Dr. Pat Rettig studied Asper when he was going through college and for years afterwards, his data showed that the three species of North American raptors most susceptible to Asper are in order: gyrfalcons, goshawks, and redtails.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was living in Washington State, there were multiple years where apprentices trapping redtails had a high mortality of their birds to asper, including one year where every single apprentice that had trapped a redtail that particular year lost their bird to asper.
Wow.
Yeah. And it just when the weight's reduced, all those proteins that fight, infections, they're made out of proteins. When the birds are starved down, those proteins for the resistance are not there. And so that's all the more reason to have a concealed trap, no stress, and as soon as possible, get to exercising. Vertical jumps, control baits, restrained pursuits. Steve Coffer developed fist drops, and that's basically you've got a burr on the fist and they're hooded. You just drop them quickly and pull them forward, drop them, and they put their wings out and flutter using a hood that they can get their beak open, and then they start to breathe. And that breathing exchange like that, if there's any fungal spores in there, they're breathing them out.
You mentioned that I'm glad you said that, because a long time ago you mentioned to me that, let's just say, gyrfalcons and goshawks have aspers when they're trapped anyway. It's always around. It's always there. And them flying and exercising throughout their daily activities expunges. Is that what the right? Expel that.
Exhales the spores.
Exhales on the exhale of their exercise, those fungal spores. And that was one thing I went, oh, okay, another good reason to exercise your birds every day.
You picture the air sacs and the lungs. When they're sitting at rest, the lungs are just doing this. But when they're really moving, the air in the air sacs, all those air sacs are being expelled. And evolutionarily, when the air is being inhaled, it goes across the lungs and captures the oxygen, goes into the air sacs, and then goes back. So in birds, they have 2 times that they can pull the oxygen out, on the way in and then on the exhale. And that when they're flapping their wings, those air sacs are moving all that air back and forth. So when they're exercising, if there's asperspore in there, they're exhaling. When they're sitting around a lot, then those asperspores start to multiply. Then the bird's got full-blown asper.
So when I've had some conversations with you, this primarily came up with that bird I was mentioning earlier that you were helping me work through asper where we were unsuccessful. But one of the things that you had said, Steve, that I thought was really insightful was that you've noticed a lot of birds, people that you're in contact with discussing asper treatments. You've noticed a lot of birds succumbing to asper at the end of the season when they're being put up for the molt, when their activity goes from being really active, being flown a lot, to sitting on their ass watching the world go by.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that?
It's going from being highly active to inactive. And the other thing in there, prophylactically, there's some good drugs out there as well to use them in combination. Because they're, the vet and the research industry have got some pretty good prophylactic drugs, and then so if anybody calls, they get it on the pharmaceutical drug, and then add this in.
What is the pharmaceutical drug that you recommend?
I don't know the names right now. There was
Mike's Falconry carries one that I've had really good luck with.
Okay.
Aspersol.
That was it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
but that's not you don't need a prescription for that from your vet. No. You can just get that on.
They sell it at Jed's as well. Jed's Bird Supply.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure what country it comes from, but there's some medicine marketed towards falcons on Jed's Bird Supply. Yeah. There's an antibiotic. There's an antifungal. There's anti endoparasite.
Yeah, I hate to give Mike's Falconry a free plug since he's not sponsoring the show, but
well, we're anti-Western sporting here, so Mike's is fine.
Yeah. So yeah,
Steve,
there's some
one other thing I wanted to ask you about in terms of your insight with Asper. In the falconry community, there is this perception that Aspergillosis is a short-term sudden onset disease. And my perception is exact opposite of that. I've had now 2 birds that I think had chronic Asper for one bird for about 3 years, another bird for about roughly a year before it flared out and turned fatal. And I know from discussions with you that you think it's primarily a long-term low-grade infection that will suddenly flare up to be real critical. I've also had similar conversations with several other falconers that had goshawks have an Asper infection that they just didn't notice until some stress event flipped it, and it flared up and went critical. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
This is my current hypothesis, is that the very fact that the birds, when they get Asper, they develop a protein of titers. That means that the relationship with Asper has been going on for millions of years. To develop you can test the bird's blood to know that if they have or ever had Asper. So it means that there's a very close relationship with Aspergillosis. And we see Asper as a disease, but I think it's a parasite. And that not only is it a parasite, but a true definition of a parasite, it's extracting from the host some nutrients, or it's in its reproductive cycle. But a good parasite is benefiting the host as well. And that if you're shortening the lifespan of the host, you only get a short period of time to reproduce and produce the spores and produce it and distribute it. But if you actually are advantage to the host, you can increase its survivability. That you can increase your reproductive output. And I think there's some circumstantial evidence for that. By the very fact that when they build their nest, that they include it, they include the greenery afterwards. And this is a long-term, adaptive relationship, and that they're adding it in to medicate themselves something that they've already got. So these are adult female goshawks and their chicks, and that the Asper must be there, and that very possibly the chicks in the nest are being inoculated. And one of the reasons when I came up with this hypothesis with Dr. Moeller is that we were going out into the environment looking for this ubiquitous fungus, Aspergillosis. And we took petri dishes, swabs, and to find Asper. And guess where we could find Asper almost, well over 80% of the time? Find a bird nest, swab a bird nest, and we get Asper. Bullock's orioles, robin's nest. So it means that these robins would have it, or Bullock's orioles, or red-tailed hawks, or goshawks, and then when they're packing the sticks around, they're breathing on the sticks, and then they're passing it on to their offspring. If the offspring are on the move, they're on the move, and then the spores are germinating, and they're breathing them out and spreading it out, and they get to be adults. It had to be an adult that is depositing the Asper spores. So what could it be happening that would be an advantage? God, thanks for asking to bring this question up. I would have forgot it. One of the things that happens with the birds with Asper is that we mentioned earlier that once you start giving them the terpenes or give the pharmaceuticals, then follow it up with an antibiotic. It means that the Asper was growing in there, was producing an antibiotic that was keeping it back. like with red tails, that somebody would give me a call, and I asked them if they got squirrel bites on their toes. Are they infected? No, but they've got Asper symptoms. Cure the Asper, and then guess what happens? Toes get infected. Then they get pneumonia. So there's something in the Asper that the University of Pittsburgh, one of the things on their list is to look at this as a potential next antibiotic, that this might be a source of a very highly effective antibiotic. The other thing is that any of the birds that have had Asper and that we've cured them of, actually, let me back up. You've got a bird, a goshawk, the Midwest goshawk, they're trapping passage bird. This is the best one I've ever had. It trained fast. It was tame, got it out hunting, a month or 2 months after trapping, training, killing, it comes down with Asper. So it looks as if they had Asper. They were in good health and trained it. But the birds with Asper, it's my observation, soul duck is one of them. They learn faster. And they're tamer. So it looks as if there's an antidepressant drug that can come out of this and a psychoactive drug that could come out of this that helps them learn. And so if you can imagine your aspergillosis and you could think, and you have your own pharmacology involved, and you infect one, you want to keep your host as alive as possible, and you want to have him out there so you get him tame and he's learning, but at the same time he's very alert and he can learn faster. And so and it's that this is a real woo-woo stretch, but I think there's something really to it. So if I could come up with a drug that, or just Asper, give the bird Asper, do a lot of exercises with them to do their titers level. When the titers level are up high enough and long enough, then cure it. And I think we've got a bit. Skeeter and soul duck both had aspergillosis. I cured them of it, and they were changed after. So to put it in it's like a microdosing microdosing shrooms, right? Because it's a fungus, and it's like the other fungus that it's psychoactive. It's evolved to the point where it evolves with birds, and so as a parasite, it's not just a disease; it's a parasite. If it's a parasite, it has to do something that will benefit the host, either by the antibiotic, the psychotropic part of it, making them smarter, tamer, to become a reproducing female and male that are lining the nest, which indicates that their kids are going to get it. But where are the kids going to get it? It's on the sticks. And that's in the literature. When Dr. Mullen and I, we were having a hard time getting enough of it. There was a Bullocks oriole nest in his yard, and then a robin's nest in the other yard. And that's where we got our highest concentrations, which indicates, possibly that the adults were breathing that into the nest material.
Wow. I mean, it's not that much of a stretch because there's fungal spores in like the jungle that, like, what is that one where it's like it turns the ant into like a zombie?
That's right. It
starts walking around.
That's right. It climbs up high, it latches on, and then the spores spread.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not that far-fetched to think that it could do that.
Casey. That was the other example I was going to use.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think there's something there.
Yeah.
There's another possible way to think about how Asper may be acting. The science of studying the microbiome within complex organisms, including humans, is in its infancy. Steve and I have talked about theories he's had that Asper might just be a symbiotic organism that naturally lives within birds that just occasionally turns into a disease state. And I think those ideas are very interesting.
Because of the falconer.
Yeah, because of the falconer changing stress levels and activity levels.
Yeah. Yeah. And that spore and Asper, when it goes downhill, kicks into the disease form, and when it dies, it produces all of those spores. Instead of low over the life course of the bird starts to die, it goes into the disease form and then kills it, and then spreads it to whatever eats it, or is there, in moldy hay?
It makes sense. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Like a lot of spores, like I know, like what's that one that you step on when you're hawking? At least we got it, and it turns to dust, and it like goes out. It's
Puffballs.
But that's after it gets to that stage after it's dead. No.
Yeah.
So the fungus when it dies, it encapsulates it, and then when something steps on it, it releases.
If you look at aspergillosis in its reproductive stage, is a puffball. That's what the aspergillomas are. All the hyphae go out there. They form the reproductive aspergilloma, and then the spores are on the interior of that. Then it opens up, and then they breathe the spores.
Makes sense. I mean, most mushrooms are like that. Like murels, like you go back to the same area, and they're always there because the spores are being released.
Well, your podcast, Aaron and Casey, you've got a great podcast, and if there's some, vets out there, some researchers, anywhere where we've gone wrong, we're not describing it, because this is just my casual reading, and there's lots of new research being done, to correct us and add to it.
Yeah.
Oh, trust us, Steve. They'll let us know.
Yeah, they will. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Really is.
All right, gentlemen. Well, we're past the 3-hour mark. Do you guys feel? How do you guys feel? Calling it good, as they say, Casey.
Call this good.
Yeah.
I could see you were reaching for your blankie, Aaron.
Oh, the blankie's been here the entire time.
And Radford's settling into his couch there, and he's over on his right shoulder.
It took a while to get comfortable there. He was moving around, jostling his microphone, and now he's finally sitting still.
He's cozy now.
I had to mute it so that the vacuum cleaner in the other room wouldn't drown everything out.
I'll have you guys know, you Northwest guys, this is Pendleton right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Casey don't know nothing about that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of blankets on my lap, so
I've got a blanket down, my Pendleton blanket. It was given. I grew up on the Yakima Indian Reservation, and the Native Americans there, they give them as wedding gifts, and it's the wedding gift to Kathy and I.
Should have invited one of them to my wedding.
Yeah, yeah. A matter of fact, I called Pendleton Factory, and I called Filson and asked them what their recommendation for cleaning wool, and I couldn't get their curiosity. They said, wash in light, soap, and don't agitate, don't tumble dry, air dry it. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Right.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time, and Geoff and Mike, thank you guys for joining us today. This was a long time coming, and I got a feeling we might be doing this again sometime in the near future.